Hello YouTube, this is me, Audiobook is Live. I'd like to thank you guys for supporting me and liking and subbing to my channel. Now, check out my Patreon. For $7 you have access to all my novels. Yes, my novels, your 9 ones, you name it. Everything. Now then, you guys probably seen I'm doing premieres. Is that good for you guys or no? Do leave that in the comments in the video so I know if I should do more premieres or not. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys see me post on my new Discord channel. Do join my Discord channel so I can, because I have some new ideas for some new channel ideas. So do go there, and also you can request novels there for anything you like. Also, do leave a like and support. Now back to the video. Have a good day.
I killed the player. He was one hell of a fucker. 3 years ago, I woke up as a game character. As a side character at that. Heroic Legends of Arhan. As expected of a game, it had an enormous setting filled with all sorts of crises and events, including even the destruction of the entire world, but it was fine. Because the protagonist would solve it all. There was nowhere to run, and it's not like I could avoid things from happening by leaving this continent, so let's watch the story unfold from the side, was what I thought. At least let's have a look at the face of our dear protagonist, Park Siho, who was now destined to have both wealth and fame but slow development, hate, fast plot. I'll live for myself, efficiency. Wait, you too. Park Siho was a possessor like me. The difference between him and I was that Siho was the protagonist, the player, and had access to the status screen, the privilege of the playable character. It was unfortunate that Siho had never played this game before, but that was something I could handle. Because I had played this game quite a lot. As a previous player and a die-hard fan of Heroic Legends of Arhan, I knew the game story by heart and had gotten most of the hidden pieces. I had also seen most of the various endings, and this informational advantage was an extremely significant merit. However, most of the items were unobtainable without the player's status screen and the system, so Siho just had to use the information I gave him to beat this game. In this world's plot, countless people will die without the protagonist, and the world will also fall to ruin. If I perish alongside the end of this world, will I be able to return to Earth? What if instead of a game over screen, it straight away led to my life being over? With that doubt in mind, I helped Siho with all my heart and strength. The kinship of being from the same hometown, and both of us having fallen into a game from Earth, made us the bestest of friends. We soon realized that I was older than him back on Earth, so it felt like I had a younger brother who would call me bro every time, so that wasn't that bad either. And although my limit as a side character was obvious, a portion of the items we got using my knowledge was also given to me to supplement my lacking abilities. The two of us made a good duo. The only unfortunate part, I guess, would be that we couldn't get closer to any of the heroines of the game. There were all sorts of male and female characters in this game, but the romance simulation of the playable character interacting with characters of the opposite gender was also an attractive element of the game. Of course, the girls would show interest in Park Siho, the player, so I only wanted to watch from the side as a fan, but Park Siho, this guy did not interact with any of the heroines and only added them into the party only when they were necessary. By the time I realized it, the party was filled with male humans and our party ended up being a sweaty group of men, including Park Siho and me. Fuck. I should have noticed something was off. When one of the main heroines, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, Alicia Arden, did not show up at the entrance ceremony. When the final boss of the first arcade, Marie, had gone missing. When the mysterious missing incidents caused the story to flow in a direction unbeknownst to me, instead of optimistically saying, "You're doing great, Siho," I should have taken a deeper look into it. The mind and the personality of the human called Park Siho, and the oddly unnatural flow of events. I should have doubted them. What's this? It was a familiar staff. If I recall correctly, it was the equipment used by the final boss girl of the first arcade. Wait. Why was this here? A gear of the character who should have been the boss of the first arcade according to the original plot. Siho and I had waited for a long time to stop the tragedy, but in the end could not stop it from happening. Back then, I reprimanded myself for lacking the power to change the original plot, but why was this here? That wasn't the end. This secretive underground basement not only had the staff but also countless other items put on display like trophies. The mace of the typical bully character, Jaeger, who picked a fight with the player at the start of the semester. The spellbook of Lark, who got expelled after stealing the mid-sem test papers. Don't tell me. I realized something common. These were all items of the ones who had gone missing. And they were items that belonged to those that were somehow related to Park Siho. Jaeger went missing in a prac after picking a fight with Park Siho at the start of the semester, whereas Lark was expelled after trying to put the blame on Park Siho, who excelled in everything he did, out of jealousy. Besides, every other item also belonged to those that were related to Park Siho in some shape or form, and most importantly, this building was Park Siho's private property. It was one of the houses that the player could buy in the game, that could be used to store items as an extra storage. I could not have imagined that tailing him who suddenly woke up at night would lead to such a result, but there was something else that shocked me the most. Why is this here? A unique single-edged sword was on display like a trophy. The demon-slaying sword that belonged to the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, Alicia Arden, an important heroine, who died before the entrance ceremony. There was only one way to obtain this hidden piece in the game, and that was to cause the death event of Alicia Arden in whatever method possible. It gave me goosebumps. The biggest premise thus far shattered, the premise that Park Siho had never played this game before. Fuck. That voice belonged to someone else. Siho. Why are you here, bro? The owner of this horrendous scene, Siho, was oddly calm. He only appeared slightly annoyed by this whole thing. I wanted to ask for an explanation questioning what all of this was about, but I could not bring myself to open my mouth in fear of what I would hear in response. Bro, calm down. Calm down my ass. How could I possibly calm down in a situation like this? How can I be calm in the face of something this horrible? I pointed at the watercolored girl that was on display in a horrifying state. Unlike the sword of Alicia Arden that was stored like a trophy, Marie Dinaref was. You lied to me when you said you couldn't catch her back then. Understanding my point, Siho tried to persuade me and justify himself. It's a demon anyway. It's an enemy. And I was just using that as efficiently as possible. Using? He smiled and blabbered as if bragging about his achievement. She even sucked her own friend. And yet she was hiding in the forest crying by herself. Do you know how hard it was? Who knew that stubborn bitch would dig a hole in the forest and stay there for a whole month? Shouldn't she pay for her sins at least? But using? What do you mean by using? She's a high vampire. A 1-year-old that just awakened is at the same level as an elder. Don't you know what happens when you refine a vampire elder's blood? You had it a lot too, bro. His words suddenly made me remember the potions he gave me. Those potions, incomparable to common potions, that rivaled low-grade elixirs. You weak. Aish. Bro, are you okay? Wait a sec. Let me clean this up. Despite babbling about such awful and horrifying deeds, his attitude towards me remained the same, and that was the most horrifying of all. But why would you? Of course it's to progress the story as efficiently as possible. The story? If I do as you tell me, bro, it's too slow. We have to suffer losses trying to save people and can't even kill retards like Jaeger and Lark. All Jaeger did was pick a fight. He was just a random bully that was blinded by his own power. As for Lark? He tried to blame Park Siho, but all he did was steal test papers. Of course, Park Siho might have been expelled if things went south, but even then, it's the same for the other bitches. They're useless unless you build rapport with them, you can't take their items and they just party up by themselves. This is the most efficient way to make use of them. How many have you? His eyes went to the corner in response to my words. He opened the player's system window and replied nonchalantly with a smile. Who knows? I don't think the kill log was over 100k. 3 more and I'll hit 100k. You fucking animal. I grabbed him by the collar. I could no longer listen to the words of an animal. How could you do that to people? Bro, wake up. How are these guys people? They're NPCs. They're game characters. And haven't you been killing people as well? There's nothing new here. Those were guys that tried to destroy the world. The people I killed were evil ones that were beyond saving. Main enemies of the story, characters that were designated by the plot as villains. How was Park Siho any different from them? This guy did not view people as people. It was true that Heroic Legends of Arhen was a game, and the game had NPCs in them. However, are people in this world also NPCs? Can they be killed just because they are game characters? What makes you say that for sure? Who says this is a game or a reality? How can you be so certain? Fuck that. Trust me. I'm telling you my way is the most efficient gameplay. I'm a veteran player at this game. Sorry for not telling you, bro. I couldn't trust you before. That was what he said. It was so dumbfounding that I couldn't say anything. Park Siho was so sure of himself, and in a way, he wasn't wrong. He had the status screen and could make use of the system however he wanted. If he had an informational advantage on top of that, like me, of course he would have used that as efficiently as possible. He had monopolized all the hidden pieces that belonged to the heroines and profited as much as possible from the events. Even when the school building collapsed. Even when the terrorists came to attack. Even when a unique grade monster attacked the school. This guy profited in whatever method possible. He excessively monopolized everything. He probably had indeed been playing this game as efficiently as possible. Over the 3 years I had spent following him, he had indeed solved many cases and problems with ease, including cases that I could not solve due to the limitations of a side character. Although it was a world within a game, Park Si-hoo stood firmly as a hero just like the intended story. However, the Park Si-hoo in front of my eyes was no hero. He was a devil. He had a psychotic gaze that I had never even seen from any of the past villains. 100,000. I reflected on the events that had been oddly efficient among the countless incidents and the victims that I had overlooked. There must also be countless massacres that happened outside of my sight. I realized that all the events which made me think the real world would naturally be different from a game plot were all affected by him. Ah, I see, so this guy had never considered this world a reality. All the people were only programmed organisms in his eyes. This world that I had accepted and adapted to for 3 years was nothing but a virtual world to him. You just chose the easy way out. What? Efficiency? Plot? Bullshit. If you really loved efficiency, why would you take Alicia Arden's demon-slaying sword? Why would you take a hidden piece that's for knights with your mage build? That's... fuck. No wonder. It's because her sister Linnea Arden was so stubbornly chasing after the sword that you couldn't take it out. You fucking retard. Of course you can't handle it all because you try to monopolize things that you can't even swallow. Stupid and sloppy idiot. Selfish and greedy little pig. Was I really hailing this guy as a hero? This fucking idiot? Elixir? You fucker. You could have substituted that with other ingredients using your crafting window anytime. All he had to do was tap the screen a few times, so what was the point of this horrendous farm? Why was he doing such an inefficient thing? Efficiency? Don't fuck with me. You just needed a sandbag to quench your psychotic thirst. What kind of bitch that loves efficiency exhibits such psychotic proof in a place like this? Aw damn it. For fuck's sake. Park Si-hoo struck my face with a seriously irritated look on his face, that was vastly different from his previous persuasive attitude. You're really driving me crazy, bro. You're driving me insane. What? Ugh. He grabbed onto my hair and pulled it back. You can't do this to me, bro. Even if everyone in the world talks shit to me, you can't do this to me. Ha, ha. Oi, what's wrong with your sentence? Be careful with your choice of words. Do you not know why I'm like this, bro? Do you really have no idea how you're driving me crazy? Si-hoo? You put your nose into others' business as a weak ass and get bashed up. And smirk in front of those sluts. He glared at me with passion that I had never seen before. It was an extremely burdensome gaze. I'm not gonna hold back anymore. Ing? It was then. He suddenly pushed his head forward as if doing a headbutt on my face. Hick. I instinctively dodged that disgusting mouth. I managed to protect my chastity by turning my head, but I could not escape from his burning gaze. I see, so you had no plans of accepting me, huh? Ah, oi dude. What's wrong with you all of a sudden? Huh? You weren't like this before. You and I were going through the story till like episode 199. What's with this sudden drift in episode 200? You are mine, bro. Both your body and heart. Do you think I'll let those foxes steal you from me? Fuck. I haven't even dated anyone before, so what's this shit about? It gave me goosebumps in a different sense than before. To the point that I needed the physical treatment of Mother Russia. Don't tell me the party is full of men because they're just there for looks and they're not the real one. My only real one is you, bro. Walk. I desperately tried to escape, but something suddenly popped out of my shadow and grabbed onto my ankle and made me fall flat on the ground. It was his spell. Bro, you can't run away. I will lock you up. Forever. Yeek. It was terrifying. It wasn't even this terrifying when I first discovered this place, nor was it this horrifying even when he confessed he was a psychotic lover of fast plot development. What's going to happen to me now? By seeing the victims like Marie, Lark and Jaeger, it was not difficult to predict my future. Being alive not in the true sense of the word, and a repetition of pain and curation. You. What about my consent? You fucker, what about my consent? I'm a heterosexual. An unwavering heterosexual. In response to my words, Park Si-hoo grinned and replied with a butter-like voice. Your consent is not important, bro. You are mine. My only real one in this fake world. You're fucking giving me goosebumps. You crazy fucker. Chalk. The shadow spread its mouth wide open. Right as I was about to lose my consciousness from his spell, I saw him float a crooked smile. It's all almost over now. After this fight is over, I will have you for myself, bro. Have me? Have me for what, you bastard? That was the end of my consciousness. I only woke up later thanks to a certain voice that reached my ears. The last stage has been opened. The final fight with the last boss will now begin. Ah, so it has begun. It seemed that Park Sihu had started the decisive battle with the last boss while I was unconscious. Since he loved monopolizing everything for himself, he would probably win against the last boss as well. If he really does defeat the final boss, what would happen to me then? I could easily imagine the horrifying future waiting ahead of me. The player has been killed. You have failed the attempt. This fucker lost? With that, I finished looking back on my past life. I returned to the past, to 3 years ago. And I must kill him. I must kill the player. Ha! A shabby blanket, a cheap mattress so hard it could crush your back, and a dirty floor. Everything was the same as the first time I opened my eyes in this world. Phew. Walking into the bathroom, I found a reflection of my face on the large mirror. Looking back at me was a fairly ferocious set of facial features and wild black hair. It was quite a decent countenance, even for a game where all the characters looked attractive in general except for the third-rate villains. If I remember correctly, the character designer was famous for not being able to draw ugly characters. Corinne Lorque. A side character who appears in an episode where the protagonist and his party venture off to save their classmates who are in danger soon after entering the Guardian Academy. He was a disposable NPC, there to help the protagonist shine, and at the same time, that was my name. Was that a dream? Yeah, that must have been a dream. Otherwise, how could a human do such a... Even a psychopath wouldn't kill people for annoying them. Right? A human should have standards. Unless they have cider. 1 * cider equals cider. Sprite in Korea represents a fast and satisfactory development, whereas sweet potatoes represent an unsatisfactory and suffocating plot development. Comes from how Koreans drink Sprite with sweet potatoes to alleviate the stuffiness of a sweet potato. Instead of blood flowing in their veins, how could someone do such a thing? Haha. Although Park Sihu is a little dark and has an icy gaze, he's not that bad of a... That was when multiple events flashed through my mind. One of them was the flood at Rodion River, when the dam broke accidentally during the eradication of river monsters which wiped a whole village. What did he murmur to himself again when looking at the horrendous scene with over 1,000 dead monsters and thousands of human casualties? Hoo-hoo. Jackpot. Looking back, it was such a wicked smile that it gave me chills. It was disturbingly well timed for it to be a coincidence, and there were no other plausible explanations for it. That demon. What did he gain by killing so many people? In this game, you do earn EXP points by killing lives, but killing normal civilians wouldn't give that much. Ah, but if that reached thousands, and considering all the monsters that were killed by his other colleagues. Maybe he was a Satan back on Earth? No, even that would be an understatement. Phew. For now, I had to confirm the current state. This room looked the same as the cheap inn I stayed in before entering Merkava Academy. I walked over to the window and opened it with a creak. Outside lay the bustling scene of a city with a large train noisily rushing down the railway, and crowds of people walking across. It was the scene of another world that appeared to be a mix of things from the 16th to the 20th century. How would I ever forget such a vivid and intriguing sight? The clock tower is still there. The pride of the city, the clock tower, was destroyed during a fight against a unique great enemy. I knew because I was the one who defeated it. There was no way they would have repaired it already. Looking at the calendar of the motel, I realized today's date was year 999, February 27th, which should have been 3 years ago. Did I really come back? That's impossible. That was what I initially thought, but the calendar was not lying and the puzzle pieces that fit together were telling me this was reality. How much had I suffered following Park Sihu? To think all that hard work was in vain. Wait a second. What about Park Sihu? Did Park Sihu also return to the past like me? He would probably stay the same. While singing chants of efficiency, he would nonchalantly murder people. He would say something like, "It's fine because this world is a game." And yes, I do understand that mindset to some extent, considering how we entered the game we were playing, which still had a status screen and an ongoing scenario. If there was some type of a reward like, you can go back to the real world upon clearing the game, I can understand him trying to clear it without paying any heed to the process or the method. But that's way too cruel, is it not? There was a line in this world that shouldn't be crossed. Even in a game, you would be called a psychopath for decapitating an NPC and placing the head in your house like a trophy, and yet this guy did things that were far worse. He had casually killed 100,000 people. If he was someone with common sense and even a sliver of a rightful mindset, he wouldn't have carried out so many unnecessary massacres. Besides, there was a limit to how much experience points you could gain due to the level cap, and there were only so many items you needed depending on your skill tree. After hitting level 99, farming was no longer impactful, and you did not need hidden pieces for a knight when you were going down the skill tree of a mage. However, he had unnecessarily killed a lot of people. Was that really for efficiency? No. That guy was just enjoying it. He was simply relishing the pain and suffering of people he had put on display. Park Siho, that son of a bitch, had absolutely zero respect. Efficiency was just the excuse he came up with to mask his insanity. If he really did love efficiency, he would have shared all the countless hidden items which he couldn't even use to his other party members rather than keeping them for himself. Because that was how you were meant to play this game, by strengthening your party members. The fact that he devoured all that for himself meant he was just a greedy damn pig. If it's now, I can stop him. Park Siho wasn't monstrously strong yet. Do I have to kill him? Park Siho? The player? Though I might not be someone with an especially strong sense of justice, I still prided myself for having enough of a moral standard. Who knows? I don't think the kill log was over 100k. 3 more and I'll hit 100k. I clench my fist. The overflowing amount of money and treasures in that underground treasury. Although some of them were ownerless items located throughout the school, there were some which he had stolen from their original owners. The demon-slaying sword which belonged to the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, as well as the elixir ingredient that was constantly sucked out of her. Those were all things he had stolen and snatched from others. Even apart from that, his unbelievable growth in power must have been made possible only thanks to the sacrifice of many others. Park Siho. I used to think of him as a hero. Although he had a bit of Chinibu, I thought he was a true hero who accepted his fate as the player of the game and tried to save the world. I thought his personality was just slightly flawed. But I was wrong. He was a psychopath and a Ciderpath 2 *. Ciderpath equals a web novel reader who is obsessed with cider development. Who did not love this world in the slightest. Even though he was a homosexual who filled the party with handsome male characters, he did not love them. Was that why he was ruthlessly killing people? He took everything for himself, stole and harmed people to exploit the weak ones that could not even fight back at him. But even so, was it correct to kill the player? It was true he was an evil person, but at the same time he was the one destined to save an innumerable number of people. He was the protagonist who despite killing 100,000 people would soon save the world. Wait, this guy lost, didn't he? Looking back, he lost at the final boss fight. So he wasn't even the one destined to save the world? Why was this guy even singing chants of efficiency the whole time then? It was annoying the more I thought about it. This fucker was a mage, so why the heck did he gather so many damn swords in the first place? Look at the demon-slaying sword as an example. It's not even usable unless you reach the very end of a knight's skill tree, so why the heck did he even get it? He wasn't an efficiency lover, he was just a greedy monopolizer. If he won at least, I would have accepted it, but he lost. Heroic Legends of Arhan had various hidden items and ways that allowed one to strengthen both the protagonist and the party members. The most symbolic of them all were the hidden pieces located all across Merkarva Academy. Those included the demonic spirit sealed in the library, the seed gained through infinite rerolls, and the God of Lake, who duplicates items. Those were some of the things that came off the top of my head. They were the ones I told Park Siho about, which he probably knew about himself. Even apart from that, meditating in front of the wobbly rock of the Emerald Forest inside the campus can double the effect. And there were the grimoires hidden in the library which allowed one to gain an ability by simply reading them. All these had one thing in common. It was that they all had to be found after entering Merkarva Academy. In other words, it meant Park Siho would get stronger in full swing after entering the academy. The entrance ceremony in Heroic Legends of Arhan was the day after the anniversary of the Continental War of Liberation, March 2nd. Currently, it was the 27th of February, and Park Siho would most definitely be at the level of grade 5 right now. Why was I so certain of it, you may ask? It's because, considering his smartass personality, he would have flaunted his skills in one way or another during the admission test. He would have become the best freshman of history, or would have broken the high score to leave a record. Why? Because that gloomy bloke had to show off his smart ass. But during the admission test, he barely made it through, which meant he was a complete newbie on my level at this current point in time. It was hard to imagine how much stronger he would become immediately after entering the school grounds. In fact, he might even get stronger on the day of the admission. But right now, it was a different story. Although I was just a random grade 5 knight for now, that was the same for Park Siho as well. Our abilities would exponentially grow further apart, which means I have to do it now. Now was the only chance to kill the player. Then going back to the main question at hand, where was Park Siho? I had no idea. However, he had to be near this city right now, because he must be planning on killing the Sword Emperor's granddaughter, Alicia Arden, to steal her sword. It was one of the first big events that stirred up the academy alongside the vampire event. The granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, Garand, famous for being an unfathomably powerful unique grade knight, did not show up in the entrance ceremony. Naturally, it created an uproar as city guards were all dispatched to search for her. It was only 3 days later that they discovered her corpse. Her death was due to a monster. It seemed that being left alone with a sharp stab to her rib had been the biggest cause of her death. According to the state of the corpse, she was estimated to have died around 5-7 days prior. She was discovered on March 5th. The estimated time of her death is from February 26th to 28th. Which means, she might be killed today. In fact, she might have been killed already. Now was not the time for this. I quickly changed my clothes and left the inn. Alicia Arden's estimated time of death was from yesterday to tomorrow. The reason I clearly remembered the estimated time of her death and the forest she was discovered in was because I looked into it from how strange it was for the story to deviate from the main plot. Back then I couldn't find out anything else and had to get over it despite how unsettling it was, but now I knew exactly what happened. It was Park Siho who killed Alicia Arden, and, in turn, that meant saving Alicia Arden would also coincide with an opportunity to kill Park Siho. How was Park Siho able to come across Alicia Arden? Why would a strong character like Alicia Arden, who could easily reach grade 2 already be involved with a grade 5 like Park Siho? Tutorial quest. The first quest given to a player playing the game in order to let them grasp the initial combat system. That was the only time that Park Siho could have been involved with Alicia before admission. I knew the location of the tutorial quest. It was a place I naturally started to remember since I have played it multiple times. I have to break into the tutorial. It won't go the way you want this time. Footnotes. 1 * cider equals cider, Sprite in Korea, represents a fast and satisfactory development whereas sweet potatoes represent an unsatisfactory and suffocating plot development. Comes from how Koreans drink Sprite with sweet potatoes to alleviate the stuffiness of a sweet potato. 2 * cider path equals a web novel reader who is obsessed with cider development. The tutorial of Heroic Legends of Arhan was not made to be cleared. It was a linearly designed story meant to teach the basic combat method and the game system, while also including an encounter with one of the named characters. The tutorial quest consisted of an outbreak of monsters attacking a magic carriage heading to Merkarva City. There were 2 allies in the tutorial, a grade 3 knight, Leon, and a grade 4 knight, Laura, who were hired as guards of the carriage. Part 1 of the tutorial was to protect the people with these 2 while waiting for the carriage to finish repairing. It was literally a tutorial to teach the game's system instead of focusing on the difficulty of the fight. Phew, that's all of them. That wasn't bad, kid. Haha. Thank you. Mr. Leon. Miss Laura. We're done repairing the carriage. The people inside the carriage were heaving out sighs of relief while the driver reignited the crystal that allowed the cart to move in preparation to resume their journey. Good. Shall we go back inside? I want to hurry up and take a re. Now. It was part 2. Goa. A deafening howl shook the forest as suffocatingly heavy air descended upon the ground. Laura. I know. The 2 knights raised their weapons and stayed vigilant. There was something inside the woods. Each passing minute seemed like an hour when something suddenly popped out of the woods. It didn't take long for them to realize it was an uprooted tree. So far it has been the same. Dodge. The tree was pulled down by gravity towards the knights. Kwang. They stumbled on the ground while dodging the falling tree, and that was when a monster immediately jumped out of the woods. An ivory-colored face, long arms and an outstretched body. It was the grade 2 monster with sharp claws, Beowulf. Kawa! Dodge! The Beowulf plunged at the guy who was on the ground but was blocked by Laura, who jumped in with her body. Kang! Kook! However, Laura was not strong enough to withstand the might of a Beowulf. Huck! While still pushing down on the spear that was blocking its claws, the Beowulf used its other hand to strike Laura. A light swing of its arm created a not-so-light impact on her ribs. Kahuk! Her body rolled across the ground. Seeing his comrade collapse in one hit, Leon would hurry the player and get on the carriage. Run away to the city. I'll buy some time. Here, the player would share a few words and suggest fighting alongside Leon, but that was a meaningless waste of text. Without any hesitation, he rushed to the carriage and told the driver to depart for the city, because there had to be no witnesses. Now, let's go back. Going back, he saw the horrid claws of the Beowulf sticking deeper into Leon's aura with each strike. It looked like a scene straight out of a horror movie, to the point he would have run away immediately if he didn't know it was a game. Ugh, kid. Run away. Shut up, ugly. I wouldn't have come here if not for the scenario. Inwardly sneering at the devoted Leon, he pointed his sword. The monster would probably start facing him soon. I can't leave you behind and run away. It was when he was decorating himself with a few words that the sharp claws of the Beowulf pierced deeply into Leon's neck. Then the monster's violent gaze turned around, looking for the next prey. Big. The monster that was taller than 2 meters gave off an insane amount of pressure by just walking closer. So damn big. At the start, he was thinking of fighting stylishly with a sword, but he scrapped that bullshit immediately. He was most definitely going to change to a mage and carry around a staff. Kawa! The Beowulf charged at him with a loud roar. Random sword strikes won't be able to create any wounds on its body, but like mentioned before, this tutorial was not made to be cleared. It was a linearly designed story meant to teach the basic combat method and the game system, while also including an encounter with one of the named characters. All I need to do is buy time. And if after buying time that NPC really does show up, then I'll admit this is a game. It was then. Please bend your back. A streak of light flashing from the forest struck the Beowulf, but the beast reacted in time. Kururu. Kong. The sharp claws collided with the sword as sparks flickered from their strike. Seeing the superhuman reaction speed of the wild beast, the owner of the sword strike was flustered. It got blocked. Luina? No, Alicia Arden. Her brown hair gently touched the shoulders exposed by her revealing martial arts uniform. Her meek appearance left a gentle impression unlike her sister, and she was the solace saving the protagonist. This NPC designed as the player's classmate had a sword as classy as her beauty. One of the 6 royal swords. Demon-slaying sword. It was the hidden piece that could be gained with the activation of her death event. And if Alicia Arden died, it would become possible to add Swordmaster Luina Arden, a stronger character all throughout except for the hidden skill, into the party. Sent as the saving grace, the named NPC was strong. Since this was to show off a reliable party member for the future, she would easily be able to deal with a same-graded monster. But there was something in this tutorial you could do to change the plot. It was a type of Easter egg, or a bug depending on how you considered it. You can step back. I will deal with the stab. Huh? Alicia Arden felt a dagger stabbing into her shoulder. She couldn't help but allow the attack because it was completely against her expectations. Kook. Why? Blocking the claws of the Beowulf that tried to attack her regardless, Alicia staggered a step back. It wasn't a detrimental injury. She thought it would be fine to deal with the wound after defeating the Beowulf. Ugh? But she suddenly turned dizzy as her vision wavered. Poison? How? Was he waiting for me to come? It was by pure coincidence that she saw people getting attacked by a monster. She was walking towards Merkarva Academy for the admission and coincidentally came across them. How did he know? Without knowing the future or something how? There's the mutual death event. Nice. One of the strategies used by the veterans of this game, which allowed friendly fire, was to kill the named NPC with a death event as soon as possible to take the hidden piece and their post-death scenario. However, players were weak in the tutorial stage. They would simply die after attacking a named NPC during the tutorial from their retaliation. Thank goodness there's the system window. After using the inventory to craft an immediate debuff poison that slowly dropped HP, he had applied it to the dagger beforehand. It was easy to neutralize it with a first aid skill, but that would be impossible during a fight against a grade 2 monster. Clank! The clashing sound of claws and the blade echoed through the forest. Even though she was weakened from the poison, there was no way she would lose that easily because named NPCs all had a card up their sleeves. Kang. Upon perhaps realizing that wasting time was the worst option, Alicia Arden threw her body behind and sheathed her sword again. Calm down. Focus. 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 It was coming, Alicia Arden's unpolished secret move. As a character publicly acknowledged for being strong in the early game, her skill was definitely powerful enough to kill the monster in one slash. Even though it might be limited to trash mobs, it was still a very strong skill. Kawa. The Beowulf ran in with a roar thundering across the forest. Stupid trash mob. Running into its own grave. Alicia Arden was in the perfect posture for her Batajutsu, to unsheath her sword in one flash. At this rate, she would easily defeat the monster and try to deal with the guy who stabbed a poison dagger from behind. That won't do. He threw a dagger at Alicia who was posturing herself for the slash, because one small interruption tended to ruin her skill even in the game. Kang. UHT? She parried the flying dagger with her superhuman reaction speed, but that was exactly what he had wanted, because the Batajutsu that was supposed to be facing the Beowulf ended up cutting something else. Kura! Without even the time to fix her posture, Alicia hurriedly swung her sword at the plunging Beowulf. Stab! The demon-slaying sword pierced through the Beowulf's neck. It died on the spot. Ugh! Alicia wasn't unscathed either, evident from the blood gushing out from the side of her belly. Flop! She trembled from the poison and the excessive bleeding before soon falling on the ground. Although she was still conscious, her body refused to move. No. I have to get up. She was dizzy. Her body refused to move no matter how much she struggled. It wasn't a deadly poison and was more of a debuff and paralysis, but she would probably die from bleeding too much if left like this. She's not dying immediately. Is it slightly different from the game? Why? There was no value in answering the question of an NPC. Taking out the demon-slaying sword from the Beowulf's neck, he was dazzled by the gleaming blade. Hoo-hoo. Jackpot. It was an extremely strong hidden piece even inside the game. Although you would need a special pair of eyes and skills to make the most out of it, that was to worry about later. It might not even be bad to gather all the hidden pieces to aim for 100% achievement. Ah, you get EXP for killing a named NPC, don't you? He approached Alicia, who was on the ground bleeding from her mouth. Killing this foolish little bitch would probably be even easier than killing a stupid village kid. But the amount of EXP you gain would be in a whole different league. Thud. Ugh. What was that? He touched his nape that was hit by something and found orange powders on his fingers. Who's there? There was nothing like this in the game though? Did someone get out of the carriage? Was there someone alive out of the ones attacked by the Beowulf? It might be poison. Thinking that, he immediately took an antidote out of his inventory and drank it. The antidote detoxified anything as long as they weren't a lethal poison, so there should be nothing to worry about. He stepped back with a gulp. Hurry up and come out if you're there, he shouted, but instead of a reply, squeak! 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 What came back was the noise of approaching monsters. I knew where the tutorial took place. It wasn't too far from the main gates of the city, and was a place I had been to multiple times after the event that happened there. Although I did come here, I had to admit I didn't prepare anything. I had yet to craft a weapon at the academy and the only thing in my possession was a utility knife. But if there was none, all I had to do was make one. There were two things I had to do. It was stopping Park Sihu from killing Alicia Arden, and killing him instead. Wait, that's... I was speeding through the messy woods when an orange mushroom entered my sight. It was a mushroom which was quite common in this forest. Swoosh! In the middle of the sprint, I plucked it out and continued running. Taking out a coin purse from my pocket, I emptied it and threw the mushroom inside. What I had to do after that was simple. I pressed on the mushroom inside the purse to mash it into a powder, and then picked up a pebble from the walkway to make it easier to throw. All I needed now was a weapon. Although I could use a utility knife, the range and power of this tool was far too insufficient. If I had time, I would have made a wooden spear or a bow, but time was not on my side. Clash! Clink! Hearing the sound that was clearly from a battle, I hid my presence and approached to find a group of adventurers fighting a beast. Gawa! Beowulf! It was the tutorial boss, and at the same time a boss that was not meant to be defeated. It was the boss of part 2 of the tutorial that was there for the named NPC to come in and help with. The boss patterns were quite limited and a veteran would be able to do a punching challenge, but a game was different from reality. Even I was trembling when I was first killing a monster. Damn it, so it's today. If it was tomorrow or the day after that, I would have been able to have enough preparations, but all I had as a weapon was a utility knife. And if it wasn't today, I would have been able to save those people as well, but... Kid. Run away. I can't leave you behind and run away. You are here. Park Sihu. Action. The only playable character of this game and the protagonist. My comrade and friend who I fought alongside with, for 3 years. Even though I had it wrong the whole time. After that, things proceeded according to the scenario. There was a person who came to save Park Sihu who was single-handedly facing the Beowulf. The granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, Alicia Arden, was here to save Park Sihu from the Beowulf. Now, this was the turning point. Are you the player Park Sihu I know of? Or are you just a righteous protagonist of this world? I might be wrong, and I might have to watch for the time being. In fact, maybe what I went through was nothing but a dream. Stab. Huh? That expectation was broken alongside Alicia's stunned voice. There's the mutual death event. Nice. I see. So it is you. Sihu. Flop. In the end, Alicia collapsed seemingly in a mutual death event with the Beowulf after a consistent interruption from Park Sihu. It's alright. Alicia Arden isn't dead yet. If I had a weapon, I would have ambushed Park Sihu and gotten rid of him already, but all I had was a utility knife which wouldn't be able to pierce through the Beowulf's skin. She's not dying immediately. Is it slightly different from the game? A nonchalant voice flowed out of his mouth. It was his unique manner of speech which showed zero respect to human beings. Who knows? I don't think the kill log was over 100k. Ah, 3 more and I'll hit 100k. I still remembered vividly how he showed off his kill record. Was Alicia Arden your first victim? Or have you been a composed killer the whole time? There was no way I could tell that, but what was certain was that he would continue killing numerous people as if there was nothing wrong with it. He wouldn't stop tragedies despite knowing they would happen, and would instead instigate them for efficiency or his own benefits. In fact, he might even create tragedies himself. I couldn't let him do that. I will not let him do such a thing. Picking up the purse of mushroom powder, I threw it at him. He let out a flustered voice before taking out an antidote from the thin air and drinking it. He might think it was poison, but he was wrong because it wasn't. Squeak! 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 Dashing in were beasts as big as humans with a horn on their forehead. They were the grade 5 monsters, horned rats. They were coming after sensing the smell of mushroom powders that were covering Park Sihu's body. Fuck. I couldn't help but click my tongue while hearing his rough gasp. There were a lot less monsters than I imagined. 3 horned rats were a lot less than what I had hoped for. With just 3 grade 5 monsters, it would be impossible to kill Park Sihu because he was still a player regardless of his rotten personality. These damn trash mobs. Squeak! The horned rats were bisected from the sloppy swings of his sword. Because of the demon-slaying sword taken from Alicia, the fight was not difficult for him in the slightest. However, it did succeed at grabbing his attention. After carefully sneaking up, I checked Alicia's state before going up to the Beowulf who was dead with its tongue out. Alicia was still breathing although with much difficulty, whereas the Beowulf was completely dead. I took out one of its fangs using the utility knife when a rugged voice was heard from behind. Fuck. Who are you? Being overgeared is pretty overpowered indeed. Even though they were grade 5 monsters, a newbie killing 3 of them in 1 minute was definitely not an easy feat. Carrying the Beowulf's fang in a reverse grip, I turned around and found Park Sihu glaring at me with a ferocious look on his face. Soon, his eyes widened into circles. Corinne Lork? Why are you here? Even among the countless attempts of veterans, there had never been any tutorial with Corinne Lork, because he was a side character who couldn't even enter the party. To be frank, it was quite amazing that he even knew my name. Oi. What? That's not how you hold a sword. Huh? While he was dumbfoundedly standing in place, I kicked the dirt up. It was a feint to block his sight. Seeing how he instinctively swung the demon-slaying sword, it was evident that he was a complete newbie at fighting. You bastard. However, the random movements of his sword were still able to block my approach. He was fast, his physical stats were definitely better than mine. Die! Swoosh! Swoosh! There was practically zero swordsmanship in his swings, but the sword being supported by his superior stats could still be detrimental to me. Deciding to sacrifice the flesh for a bone, I stepped closer in as Park Sihu excessively retreated back. He was being cautious. His gaze was on my right hand. Even though a Beowulf's fang was indeed quite sharp, it was funny how someone carrying a longsword was so scared of it. However, that was what saved his life. Good. Therefore, I deliberately flaunted the fang by pushing it forward as he gulped in response. He must be thinking of how he would die if this were to pierce his neck. Good. Stay on guard. Focus on this fang as much as you want. Right as his wariness was about to reach the peak. Walk! I shouted and he instinctively stepped back. The fang was as long as a dagger and wouldn't be able to reach him in time before he recovered his posture, but... Sheik! That was a big enough gap for me to throw something. Wake! The utility knife I threw aiming for his chest dug into his right arm in the middle of his staggering struggle. I threw my body towards him in the midst of his confusion. Bam! Park Sihu and I rolled across the ground as one cluster. In the end, it was I who took the mounted position and after recovering my balance I unhesitatingly struck the fang down. Walk! Thanks to his insane reaction speed, he somehow managed to grab my arm in spite of the situation and we were placed in a stalemate. Kuh. His eyes quivered seeing the horrendous fang in front of his eyes. I was also desperate in my own way so I tried to push the fang down but he was stronger than me. Kook. Slowly, his hands were starting to push my arms away. It was a matter of time for me to lose in this bout of strength, so I held my ground by adding my weight onto my arm. Hup. Lifting my left arm, I struck my right arm down like a hammer. Bam! It went slightly off-center but it nonetheless dug into his body. The fang that went in and out of his traps was soaked in blood. Bam! Kook! Bam! 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 Stab! After being stabbed multiple times in his chest and his neck, blood seeped out of his mouth. His hands could no longer even grip onto my arms, and Park Siho began thrashing his arms around as if he was in a deep ocean. He swam in the ground in order to escape from the grasp of death, but he started to give up soon after sensing his impending doom. Behind the tears in his eyes were emotions full of rage and the questions, why and how. But there was no room for sympathy for the human called Park Siho. Thanks. I was able to become stronger thanks to you. I had no regrets. That day, I killed a young beast who would later grow to become a monster. System error. Player's death. Calculating the likelihood of the completion of the main scenario. Reviewing the remaining enemy forces. All the main scenario bosses, alive. Player dead at level 1. 1st attempt at finding the best option. Use the remaining energy to load the backup world. Variable, Corinne Lork. Examining possibility. Examining ideology. Examining suitability. Reviewing the play log. Re-establishment of Corinne Lork's identity. Normal side character. Named hero. Named character, insignificant successor Corinne Lork. AAA class knight. Lifted the growth limit of Corinne Lork, normal, by 4.8 times. Final level, 87. Recalculating the likelihood of the completion of the main scenario. Possible. 2nd attempt at finding the best option. Succeeding the player's EXP system to Corinne Lork, hero. Minimum backup in the case of an incomplete scenario. A bare minimum will be applied to the succession. Subplayer, Corinne Lork, will thus begin succeeding the role of the player. I killed Park Siho. I killed the player. Next to the corpse of the one who shared the same homeland as me, who had been with me through the ups and downs of my life, I deeply pondered to myself. There will be a void created due to the player's death. The story of heroic legends of Arhan of defeating the final boss and saving the world had ended before it could even begin. Ho, jackpot. Well done. Nice job killing him. But thinking of what he had done, I commended myself. It would have made me a little guilty if he had succeeded in defeating the last boss, and I might have even hesitated while killing him. Placing the lives of 100,000 people he will be killing later on and the world on each side of a scale, I might have contemplated my path. More importantly, what mattered the most now was the message that appeared when killing Park Siho. Subplayer, Corinne Lork. It wasn't my first time seeing a status screen, because I did see it when I was swallowed by Park Siho's shadow and was locked inside. Thump thump. My heartbeat increased. I knew better than anyone else how much Park Siho had gained by using the system window. Status screen. Corinne Lork, hero. Oh. Finally, I have the godly status screen myself. Class, restricted. Personality, restricted. Talents, restricted. Aura, restricted. Mana, restricted. Specialties, nothing. Character skills, 4 details, restricted. Crafting window? Access denied due to insufficient qualification. Inventory. Access denied due to insufficient qualification. Skills tab. Access denied due to insufficient qualification. Aish, goddammit. Uninstall this damn game. Is this what bare minimum meant? This is just too much. Other people shout status screen, to allocate skill points, craft legendary weapons and speed through quests, so why is this only happening to me? And did you have to say nothing for something I didn't have? Oh my, how nice of you. Cough. Ha. Leaving aside the discouraging turn of events, I had to save her. Alicia Arden? Are you alright? No yeah, looks like it. She seemed alright for the time being judging from how she could still speak. Ugh. Eyes, my eyes. I can't see. Do you feel dizzy, and is it hard to smell? Are your ears also fuzzy? How did you know? Your tongue's also twisted. Blurry vision, dizziness and slurred words. There was only one possibility for that. It seems like the poison of a duke frog. It was fairly common in the East. There was even a quest to find a duke frog from a well in the player's starting village, and he must have used that using the crafting system of the system window to separate the poison. His crafting level must have been low, so it shouldn't be lethal, but it will continue sucking her HP dry if left unattended. I had to feed her a simple antidote at least. 5 seconds would have been enough if I had the crafting window, but it was annoying the more I thought about it. Anyway, carrying her all the way to Merkarva City would take at least a few hours, so the best option would be to stop her bleeding and remove her poison here. Since it wasn't a lethal poison, she should be fine after a few days of suffering as long as she wasn't bleeding. Huck. Am I going to die? Ignoring her, I tightened a belt around her wound. Quack. A pitiful scream reverberated across the forest, but a hemostasis was supposed to hurt. Although it might be deathly painful, it had to be done in order to avoid death. It's all right. I'm a master at stopping blood. To be fair, I had never been the one to use a system window. I had to live in my own way without it. Wow, look at her scream. Her voice was thunderous like the cry of a baby born to be a general. I had no idea if she even heard what I was saying. Gush! Blood spurted out through the gaping hole created by the Beowulf. Hugh. B. Benefactor. NN? Let me leave, my last words. Last words my ass. Bite onto this. I placed Park Sihu's wrist inside Alicia's mouth. It would be very painful, so I wanted her to hold on to herself by biting on it. It's okay to bite down as hard as you want. Alicia looked teary as if she was in a great amount of pain. I continued with the hemostasis and she bit down hard from the severe sense of pain as her teeth dug into Park Sihu's wrist. Well, it wasn't my hand, so it was none of my business. I was somewhat done with sealing the wound below her rib. What I had to do next was detoxify the poison, and I had been in this world for 3 years already, and knew how to make a basic antidote without the likes of a system window. Fortunately, the ingredients were nearby, so all I needed was some water and a tin to store the medicine, and found it. As expected, there was a bag discarded on the floor. It was probably Alicia's bag that she threw away before jumping in to save Park Sihu. Oh, there's a tin pot as well. Pouring water into the pot, I mixed in a few ingredients. Starting a fire wasn't that difficult thanks to my abundant camping experience. I'm making the antidote now. Hold on a bit more. Ah. She sniffed without saying anything, which was probably due to the poison still encroaching her body. From how she was talking about last words and stuff, she might be thinking she's dying, but people don't die that easily. While boiling the antidote, I threw Park Sihu's corpse away. Alicia had been biting on the wrist so hard that I could see the bone inside the wound. I was in the middle of adding the key ingredients to make the antidote when Alicia sniffed and twitched her nose. The guts of a horned rat had a pretty nasty smell indeed. Benefactor. Arduously opening her mouth, she called me her benefactor. Why, your name. Please, tell me your namey. You don't need to know. Don't bother asking. Why? Don't worry and take a good rest. I will wake you up when the antidote is done. Okay. It might have been to make her shoulder a mental debt towards me, but what I was going to do now had to be kept a secret. The antidote would be finished in about 30 minutes, so until then, I placed a piece of cloth wetted with medicine over her eyes. Now, let's analyze the situation. The current point in time was the tutorial quest and the time before the admission into the academy. I had regressed to 3 years before my death. Astonishing events would be occurring with the academy at the center, and many stories will be affected. Heroic Legends of Arhan was quite literally the game of the legendary records of a hero. The player was the hero tasked with saving the world and defeating countless villains as well as the final boss. And yet that player had been killed by me, so who would be the one that had to act in his stead? I have to do it. It was something I had prepared myself from the moment I decided to kill Park Sihu. He and I shared a few conversations about what would happen after clearing the main scenario of the game. The reason he had been diligently clearing the game regardless of his evil trait was because the world would be destroyed without defeating the final boss. Ever since we entered this world, we had no other choice but to risk our lives in saving this world. That was why. I could understand him a bit, on why he had been killing people for the sake of his efficiency. Action. But he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have become a villain just because he wanted to beat this world. Hugh. At the very least, it was fortunate that I would be receiving some level of support thanks to that sub-player or whatever, but access denied due to insufficient qualification. I wish they had done it properly if they were going to do it. It seemed that I shouldn't expect anything from the system window and think of it as non-existent. Whatever the case, I had to take the player's place, but the problem was that I had none of the convenient devices of a player. The Skills tab, which allowed the player to choose skills. The inventory that allowed one to take out things from anywhere. And the item crafting window, which was essential for some of the quests, were all gone. But most importantly, Park Sihu lost with all of that in his possession. He knew more about the game Heroic Legends of Arhan than I did. Even after monopolizing all the hidden pieces and experience points using his overflowing amount of information, he still lost to the final boss. Relying on questionable support and information about the future was not enough. I needed power outside of the system. What was fortunate was that I wasn't a normal possessor either. 3 years. While advancing the story, I was tempered throughout the vicious fights and struggles. I was desperate in my own way for survival, and I didn't skip any of the training events that were simply ways to gather skill points for Park Sihu. Judging from how I was graded as a hero, which was the highest rank a named character could get, one could say it was a huge growth for a random side character. However, that was still far from enough, and there were also plenty of hidden pieces that I couldn't use as a non-player. That was why I had to use something outside of the system, for example, Jik. I wrote a letter on the ground with my finger. The symbol engraved with the layer of dirt as the canvas and my finger as the pen was the ancient letter meaning wind. Waruk. The fire boiling the medicine wavered faintly from the breeze. It worked. What I used just then was rune magic. These were the ancient letters where the letters themselves functioned like magic. It was the only magic that I learned in the previous iteration, and was the only thing I could use as a dumb non-magic user. It was a dead language that you would now only be able to find at the corner of Merkarva Academy's great library. What I was going to do now was arrange these rune letters which contained power on its own to engrave sentences into my body. A precept. Duty, a vow that had to be kept. Restriction, a limit placed upon oneself. Pledge, the ambition that one had to be aspiring for. These three were tied together as a precept, and was one of the strongest rules of this world, that either acted as the source of superhuman power or the agent of ruin. This was different from the skills and stats of a player. It was just one of the hidden settings added to explain the power of the boss characters. Why did I not use such an amazing thing in the previous iteration, you may ask, and it's because the risk was too high. As one would be able to tell from the word precept, these three acted as the source of tremendous power, but it was possible to work around them after reading the sentences engraved on the body. The enemy might be able to use my precept like I did, to create a trap leading to ruination. There was no reason to bother risking it in the previous iteration where the player was growing without a problem, but things were now different. Biting off the skin on my fingertip to let it bleed, I then started carving rune letters into my body. Duty. It was the vow that always had to be kept, and was one that would grant me power when followed. The trick to engraving duty was by writing down something that could be repeatedly activated. Let's say it was running 50 meters every day. In that case, my stats would increase every time I accomplished running 50 meters every day. A safer duty would be, for example, I will not eat birds for the rest of my life, which is done cumulatively, but it was okay to increase the risk here because I knew a lot of things about the future. Besides, the amount of increment power also increased depending on the weight of the vow itself. In this world, there was something called karma, which was the same as experience points, except that was what it was called in this world, and the karma you gained by defeating a grade 5 monster was nowhere near the one you gained by killing a grade 1 monster. Similarly, this duty had to be shouldering a heavy enough karma in the perception of this world to give an equal amount in return. I will not disregard the misfortune of the good. Chiik. Cook. Rune letters were carved onto my body as complete sentences. This might be how it feels to have a scorching hot piece of metal engraving a letter on my body as I unconsciously uttered deep groans. Hew. My body felt heavy, that was how heavy the duty engraved in my body was. The regulations of precept were only applied within the user's range of cognition. Even if it was about a future or an event which had yet to occur, it would come to me as my karma as long as I was conscious of it. The keywords here were the good and misfortune. In this game, the good and evil of a character's personality were specified in the character screen, and good-natured characters overcoming their misfortune would be helpful for me as well, because they were the ones that would be fighting against this world's crisis. Put in another way, this meant the precept of duty would be repeatedly applied to me as I continued solving the quests of this game, and would result in a suitable return to my power. However, there was no need to save every good person in the world, because a precept was activated in the range of my cognition. Even if the unfortunate person walking down the street was a good person, my duty would not be activated as long as I wasn't aware of it. Next up was restriction. Restriction was a consistently activated rule that intentionally placed an unfavorable condition to oneself to permanently increase the stats. It was by nature high risk, high return. Because it was the most vulnerable out of the three precepts, it might be taken advantage of as a weakness, and perhaps was the most important one of the three. Making a weakness on their own. A normal restriction could be a detrimental one binding me like shackles, but I do not perceive spirits. Chiik. Cuff. Spirits. It literally meant astral bodies, like ghosts and elemental spirits that did not have a physical body. Like demonic beasts, the enemy of humanity that hunters had to defeat were called demonic spirits in this world. Well, although they were called demonic spirits, it didn't mean anything. Every astral body that was hostile to humanity were all referred to as demonic spirits. Elemental spirits that did not like humans, and defensive astral bodies of ancient ruins were all called demonic spirits as long as they attacked humans. And in this world, there was one rule for spirits. Spirits interfered with one another upon mutual cognition. An example was how spirits were unable to enter the mind of an unconscious person. In this world, every human had even a tiny bit of spiritual perception no matter how ungifted they were. There might be one or two, but there was never zero. What I did just then through restriction was reducing that number to zero. In other words, I would not be able to perceive spirits. I will be exempt from the rule of mutual cognition and spirits will not be able to deal with me, just like how I can't deal with them. The only way for them to touch me would probably be with the help of an elementalist materializing and giving bodies to those spirits. I knew how strong this restriction was more than anyone else, because this was the very restriction of the world's strongest rune mage, and the boss character, Valtazer. Its effect was 0% accuracy to spirits, at the return of 50% increase in power against physical existences. Anything else apart from the one used to play around Valtazer's restriction would not be able to destroy mine either. Finally, what remained was the pledge. This was the grand ambition that warriors had to be aspiring for, and the weight of that aspiration acted as a support. It was literally pledging to yourself that you would always aspire for that grand ambition. There was no need to even hesitate for this one. I will save the world. The precept has been completed. It will now be applied to the subplayer. Duty, I will not disregard the misfortune of the good. Quests will be given within the proximity of the subplayer's cognition. When cleared, the status will increase appropriately based on the karma. Failure to follow the duty will result in a decrease in stats that is 10 times greater than the increase. Restriction, I do not perceive spirits. Action. The subplayer will be unable to perceive astral bodies, and astral bodies cannot touch the subplayer. The subplayer will gain 50% additional advantage against every physical opponent. Violating the restriction will result in taking 600% additional damage from every opponent. Pledge, I will save the world. The subplayer must save the world at any cost. Additional support will be given to the subplayer when entering a fight that is in correlation to the world's doom. You will definitely die upon failing to keep the pledge. Access denied for the subplayer, Corinne Lork, due to insufficient qualification. There were a bunch of messages, but I couldn't read any of them. What's going on? Somebody please tell me. For Alicia, today was a day of misfortune with a strand of good luck. Who would have guessed that a person saved from the claws of a demonic beast would stab her with a poison dagger from behind? Her nanny used to scare her off by saying there was a thing in the city called thrill killing, and she was actually right. Alicia thought she would be helplessly murdered by that ungrateful lunatic, but she was helped by someone who defeated that murderer. And he even treated her wound. Although it was very painful when he was stopping the bleeding, there was no first aid kit around, so that was understandable. It seems like the poison of a Duke frog. Plus, he was also so well informed that he knew what poison it was just by looking at the symptoms. He must be an amazing person with remarkable experiences. She imagined the appearance of her benefactor on her own accord. His low voice sounded cold, but an undisguisable hint of kindness lingered within. Is this the so-called cold city guy who, despite looking cold on the outside, is actually very gentle to his girl? Ms. Alicia. Bite on this. Kohi? Dis? Alicia, who was in tremendous pain from the process of stopping the blood, flinched upon feeling the flesh that was inside her mouth. It was true that people would often bite on a piece of cloth to withstand an unbearable amount of pain. A person's teeth was actually a very lethal weapon. To think he would unhesitatingly give his hand for that. How could he be so gentle and sweet? Gush! Kahayayat. It hurts. It was unfathomably painful, but Alicia held it in. The wound had been created by the thick claws of a Beowulf, and it was very fortunate that her organs were relatively safe from the attack. Oh no! I was biting too hard. She had accidentally added an excessive amount of power to her jaws. There was even a deep wound on the flesh inside her mouth. Even though it should be painful, and extremely agonizing, her benefactor did not let out a single groan. Alicia marveled at his self-restraint. She had been trained by her grandfather, the Sword Emperor, but what was painful was still painful. Because of her lack of resilience, she had often been smacked on her head with the wooden sword. But, it hurts though. How am I supposed to hold it in? You can. Look at your older sister. But her sister Luina was a genius. Why was he comparing her with someone like herself? She also couldn't understand why her grandfather suddenly named her a successor candidate and was making her compete against her sister. If I receive Grandpa's sword because I'm now a successor candidate, then, how much will this sell for? Should I ask after going into the city? Oops. Her thoughts accidentally strayed off topic. Why, your name. Please, tell me your namey. You don't need to know. Don't bother asking. Why? Her benefactor did not tell her his name until the end. Why was that? Judging from how he knew her name, he must also be aware of who her grandfather was, as well as the influence of the Arden family. Alicia herself might be admonished for being ambushed like a fool, but there would be plenty of benefit for him, and yet her benefactor did not introduce himself. Why was that? A true warrior does not worry about materialistic possessions. That was what her grandfather used to tell her. Ah, I see. He saved me not because I'm an Arden, but because there was someone in front of him that needed help. That must be why he's saying he doesn't need any compensation, she thought to herself. Her impression of him was soaring up endlessly when the sound of skin being seared reached her ears along with a groan. Cheek. Cook. A groan? That wasn't from her blood had stopped flowing already, and she was now waiting for the antidote to finish boiling. Was he hurt? Was he injured while saving me? Her lips twitched from the sense of guilt. She wanted to ask if he was okay, but could not dare open her mouth. She felt embarrassed. There was a person who was hurt because of her, who was forced to close his wounds using a method as extreme as searing his wounds, and yet she, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, had been screaming Kya from something that paled a lot in comparison. In addition to that was his righteous mind that was not blinded by wealth, and that tremendously increased her impression of the man whose face she had yet to see. Hugh. He collected his breath only after searing himself a few more times, and that made her respect him even more. It's finished boiling. Ms. Alicia Arden. It's time for your medicine. Yesh. He must be a very talented man, judging from how he could create an antidote in the middle of woods like this. Bubble bubble. Her sense of hearing was the only one that still functioned properly, so Alicia lent a close ear to the boiling sound of the medicine. Soon, after a jingle, she heard the sound of the antidote being poured into a cup. You might burn your tongue if you drink it like this. Then, he started blowing, Hugh, on the cup. She was touched by his consideration. Hugh. After the liquid was cooled down for quite some time, a large hand touched her back and made her sit up straight. It'll be quite bitter. Can you open your mouth? Yes. Hugh. He cooled it down one more time before carefully letting her lips touch the antidote inside the cup. A bitter flavor immediately filled her mouth. It was too bitter. Alicia wanted to have something sweet. Apparently in the city, there was something called honey tea, and she wanted a honey bomb candy. Alicia was trying to ignore the bitter flavor by continuing her trail of thoughts in whatever direction possible when a low voice whispered into her ears. Don't worry. You can slow down. It was a gentle voice that treated her like a kid. He then continued while tapping her back. Do you have anything sweet? I'm sure it's quite bitter. Do you want me to take something out of your bag for you? It's okay. Really? Then let's get up when you're done. He then helped her finish the leftover antidote. Gulp gulp. That's right. That's how you do it. Well done. As if she was a very young sibling of his, he fed her the antidote along with his compliments. Even though she was a little embarrassed, her mind was more focused on the bitter taste of the antidote and the return of her senses from the detoxification. Her wariness dissipated and Alicia soon sluggishly fell asleep. Ahak. Kahak. After coming to her senses, Alicia immediately tried to raise her body in a hurry but ended up groaning from the stabbing pain of her wound. It was unclear whether she heard her shout or the groans, but a nurse came in from the echoey corridor outside. Ot. You woke up. We heard you were under the effect of a Duke Frog's poison. How do you feel? Can you see me? The lady in a nurse uniform checked her state and asked her questions before recording them down. Alicia bewilderedly responded to a few questions, but after waking up completely, she asked the nurse. Where is the person that carried me here? He must have been greatly hurt as well. Sorry? If you're talking about him, he left straight away. Alicia noticed she was in the emergency hospital of Mercarva City, and that her benefactor had carried her all the way here from the forest outside the city. Right. The soldiers that were on patrol retrieved your items and the corpses of the guardians. This is yours, yes, Ms. Alicia Arden? Yes. Huh? The nurse was pointing at the large bag placed in a corner of the room, but there was one thing that didn't belong to her. There was a belt with a remaining hint of blood which was made of a coarse material that was too rugged to be used by women. It was the belt used to close her wound. It was a crude and mass-manufactured belt with no particular design on it. Alicia tightly gripped onto the belt while vowing to find its owner. Ms. Nurse. Yes? The nurse seemed quite overwhelmed by the serious gaze in her eyes, and took a step back. Do they sell honey bomb candies nearby? You must only have porridge for the time being. Yuek. The third day after the end of the tutorial quest was the day of Mercarva Academy's entrance ceremony. Living 27 years on Earth, I've only been registering for courses that started at around noon in college, but after living here for 3 years, I became used to waking up early. That was still the same even after the regression of my body, and my eyes automatically opened at 6 a.m., ready for the first day of school. Heading to the bathroom, I took a warm shower and wiped the steam off the mirror as it revealed the reflection of Corinne Lorque's bare face. The unattended black hair was long enough to reach below the shoulders, but I tied it to a ponytail as always. Leaving behind the mirror that quickly turned back to being foggy, I changed into the same clothes I wore 3 days ago. Even though it used to be bloodstained, the washing skills of this world were remarkable. This jumbled-up world based on things from the 16th-20th century had things like magic artifacts and crystal technology to replicate modern products. There was no particular uniform in this academy, so I was wearing the same relatively tough pants and a white shirt like I used to even before the regression. All I needed was the student ID card received beforehand to enter the campus. Flop. I opened the wallet to check the ID card inside and found a piece of paper fluttering down to the floor. To my proud son, Corinne Lork. There are no words to express how proud your father is to have you to enter the Guardian Academy. Become a great man that can protect those around you, as well as the whole world like countless other guardians. It's your mum. Don't skip your meals and don't push yourself to become a hero. I'll be happy as long as you're healthy. Appa. Send me 10 jars of honey bomb candies when you get there. Corinne Lork was an average ungifted student like one of those players in an amateur baseball team who always stayed in the waiting room. Although he was pretty much a non-existent side character in the story, even he had a family. He had a father who was proud of him, a mother who wished for her son's well-being, and a growling and annoying younger sister. In the previous iteration, I felt very awkward around these people. Because they were the family of Corinne Lork, and not me. I even felt guilty for taking Corinne Lork away from them, and it took a long time for me to accept Corinne Lork's memories which I gained by coming into this world as my own. But now, it was different. Forging bonds with a lot of people over the past 3 years, I started to love them and I began to love this world. I acknowledged that this world was real. That was probably the difference between Park Siho and me. The difference in our perspectives would not let us understand each other until the very end. First off, let's buy some honey bomb candies and send them home. 10 jars my ass. Be glad that I am willing to send 1 jar. The place where the freshmen had to gather was the Liberty Hall located northeast of the academy. Because of how enormous the campus was, it would have taken years to go there on foot, but fortunately, there were carriages doing rounds across the campus. The automated magic carriages were traveling on top of the rails of the campus like trams, while stopping at each of the stations. As expected of one of the 4 Guardian Academies of the entire continent, they were loaded with money. In fact, academies in this world were even more influential than countries, so the amount of donations flooding in was on the level of the national budget of a kingdom. Wow! There are so many carriages. So this is Merkarva Academy. In rural cities, there would only be 1 or 2 magic carriages going around, and yet there was an abundance of them in this place, so the students that came from the countryside dropped their chins and watched in awe. It was quite rare, and in fact, some of them might have gotten on a carriage for the first time in their lives after getting the admission offer. Therefore, they were bound to mindlessly wander off due to not knowing the stations and directions of the automated carriages going around the academy. That was something the school was also aware of, and there were always people allocated at the entrance of the academy each year. I also did it in the past before the regression. This way. Everyone, all the freshmen juniors, gather up. There was a girl at the southern entrance of the academy, who was gathering freshmen in front of one of the stations. Her long turquoise color hair was spread all the way down to her waist, and her hair that was braided across the side was decorated with white potato flowers. She was wearing white clothes with a hint of blue throughout. The beret which artists would wear, her skirt, boots and the protective coat which was worn by every mage were all colored in white. Judging from how there were close to 30 students of the academy that were presumably freshmen lining up in front of her, that girl appeared to be in charge of the guidance this year. The carriage will be coming soon. It will depart after around 2 minutes. So let's move fast. But not too fast so that we don't get hurt, and let's go in one by one and go all the way to the back. The girl with turquoise hair color gave instructions to the freshman with a bright smile on her face. Her refreshing smile, which was the same as the one before the regression, flushed the faces of some of the freshmen. Are you also a freshman? Come here and sit down. Well, you're very tall. I'm sure you need to eat a lot as well. There was no one who could ever hate this girl who was kind and bright to everyone. However, I couldn't return a carefree smile as one who knew about the future waiting ahead of her. Do you want some potatoes? It's from my family, and I baked a lot of them to give to our juniors today. She took out a potato covered by a handkerchief from the basket and gave it to me. There appeared to be a preservation spell cast on it, and the potato was steaming hot. Oh right. I'm Marie Dinareff. Marie Dinareff. A genius at using magic, and a second-year student of Merkarva Academy. The unfortunate girl blessed by everyone who would have easily become a grade 1 mage, that however crumbled in an instant. I'm Corinne Lork. Do you have sugar? I don't have sugar. But I did bake them with salt. Is that okay? She looked up at me with an amicable smile on her face. It might be the same for Earth, but this world had misfortune and unfortunate tragedies decided by the scenario. People full of pride and honor might unexpectedly fall into the pit of helplessness, and a citizen leading a normal life could also be caught up in a natural catastrophe. For Marie Dunaref, her future was destined for despair. The unfortunate event was both unstoppable and unavoidable. The timed bomb instilled inside the final boss of the first arcade, Marie Dunaref, would definitely go off, and what was important was the timing of the explosion as well as the aftermath. Depending on how the aftermath was dealt with, it could lead to the future attack of the fundamentalists, but could also reduce the triggers of the Great Collapse. Everyone, shout out loud, Ba Baba, Baba, Ba Baba, Baba, Yee, Wah! Like a tourist bus of teenagers, the large magic carriage was filled with people singing a song and playing music. It would take over 30 minutes to get to the Liberty Hall from this place on a carriage, and it was always up to the Sunbay in charge of guiding the students to enliven up the mood. Thanks for clapping along, everyone. That was great. Here are some potatoes. Thank you, Senior Marie. Marie, who was in charge of guiding the freshmen, used her characteristic ability of creating friends to shorten the gap between herself and her juniors in just 3 minutes. She was a beauty with an easygoing personality, and besides, she charmed others with her overwhelming amount of food, so there was no way the freshmen wouldn't like her. People that gave away food were nice people most of the time. We are almost there. Right. You see that old lady next to the window? That lady with an afro hair makes potato croquettes and they're very delicious. You should try them when you have time. And just over there is the Creation Hall, where students learning magic gather for research. They make a lot of strange things. And over there is the Stamina Training Room. We call it the training room. You can borrow a lot of interesting weapons, so I recommend you go there at least once. But I was restricted from going there this holiday. I was using nunchucks and I accidentally broke a window. Ha 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 ha. Marie was as friendly as a capybara and immediately grasped the hearts of her juniors. Soon, the carriage arrived at the hall. You have to get off in the span of 2 minutes. But don't run, and get off slow. You have plenty of time. She kindly guided the students after getting off the carriage first. The professors are inside, so you can go in one by one and line up. Then, good luck everyone. Good luck? The other freshmen were curious about her sudden encouragement, but I knew what was waiting ahead. I was worried something might happen because of the precept, but fortunately, nothing happened. That was when Marie stopped everyone in their tracks. Oh, right. Everyone, here are some steamed and sweet potatoes for you. How many steamed potatoes and sweet potatoes were there inside that basket? I'm sure there have at least been 50 potatoes so far. See you again later. Leaving behind Marie, who was energetically waving her arm until the end, we walked into the Liberty Hall as our sight immediately turned dark. It seemed that we were the last batch. What? Can anyone see anything? The crowd buzzed from the sudden darkness in front of them. It was natural for them to be anxious considering how their peers suddenly disappeared from their sight, while being unable to touch anything. Spatial expansion. It was the unique spell of Senior Professor, Lady Josephine Clara. Do not be flustered, rookies. Ach! The shout echoing one's eardrums was the voice of Old Man Heyman, the professor of martial arts studies. I could still vividly remember how he used to shout that he was still in the prime of his life even though he was only 2 years short of his retirement age. How could the new cadets of our academy be flustered by something like this? I can only imagine how hard it would be to raise you incompetent fools into warriors. This old man was always the same. He brought my mind back to the Marine camp I went to back in my school days. Those were some crazy days back then. Stand up straight. You over there. You bony-looking one. I am looking at you. Hyuk. Students were the only ones that couldn't see what was ahead, and the professors standing on the platform were able to see everything. Academy, school, education. It was easy for people to misunderstand, but this Merkava Academy was a superhuman training facility that was centered around training instead of education. The history of this world's humanity was that of a constant strife against the demons. The most effective weapon against those monsters were the superhumans who had control over aura and mana. Ads by Pub Future. And because a Guardian Academy was a place that nurtured those superhumans, it was unavoidable for it to resemble a training facility more than a school. It's my first time seeing people like you in my 20 years of life as an instructor. Quite shocking. Every military was the same, they all began by breaking the spirits of the new recruits before anything. Marine camps which tried to replicate that military also had a similar trend. Kung. At the end of Old Man Heyman's noisy discouragement, a spotlight appeared in that space of darkness. Ah, hello. I am Professor Fermac Damon, in charge of this year's freshman welcoming ceremony. Professor is too stiff, so you can call me sir. Standing in the middle of the stage welcoming the freshmen was a man who looked like a good-for-nothing compared to Old Man Heyman. His outfit and attitude were unbelievably casual compared to other professors, but the muscles being shown underneath his short-sleeved shirt was bulky enough to overwhelm the freshman. Been a while since I saw that bastard. All the professors next to him as well as Fermac Damon were all staring into the darkness. On the left side was the obstinate Old Man Heyman Welsh, and on the right-hand side was Professor Lalara Mars from Alchemy. They were practically divided into two groups, professors from the Night Department and those from the Magic Department. Even though it was called a freshman welcoming ceremony, the professors were all gathered here because today's event was a very important one for students. They would soon be conducting the student grading test. It was a fairly important test, because the grades of the missions and the support funds would all be decided by this one until the next test. Well, you are all here to either become a knight or a mage, and you already got a qualification the moment you came here, but his gaze that was so sharp it would pierce through his sunglasses penetrated through the students' action. I would hate to see random weaklings acting tough, so let's have a look at everyone's abilities. Gulp. I could hear nervous gasps from here and there. Even though he was wearing a light costume, Fermac Damon was a grade 1 knight who was even introduced in the monthly Guardian magazine. That vigor was not something freshman newbies could handle. Slap. Lady Josephine swung her horse whip once. The area turned dark again, as a short text appeared in the eyes of every student. Corinne Lork. Aura rank, low, 680. Mana rank, very low, 120. Specialties, nothing, 0. Overall grade, grade 6. It was nothing new, but my stats were really trash. Considering how named characters began at medium-low in general, with the numbers starting from 5,000, as well as how the player's initial stats began from 3,000, my stats were horrendously low. The ranks are the biggest problem. Do they go up with the precept as well? The capacity of aura itself could be increased by having potions or through increasing stats, but the ranks were a different issue altogether. A higher rank meant an increase in the amount of aura you could release at once, and in turn meant an increase in power. Even if the total capacity of aura was to be either 10,000 or 100,000, as long as the rank stayed at low, the maximum output at a given moment would always stay at 100. Whether you had a water tank or were living by a lake, you had to use water through a faucet. That was what it pretty much meant. For now, I can only believe in myself. Ah. So in front of you, there should be your name and your overall grade. Let's all go to the number you received, from, let's see, here to all the way there. The spotlights appeared again. Even though the students were a bit fussy, they nonetheless moved to the prepared signboards. In front of the sign for grade 6, there were only 3 timid-looking ones apart from me. There should be about 400 new students in total this year, and yet there was only 1% of them in front of this grade 6 signboard. Those numbers are the grades given after calculating your mana capacity, so you could say it is your mana rank. From now on, you will be taking tests starting from a grade lower than the one you received. Ads by Pub Future. The crowd buzzed again, but Fermac made them shut up by trampling on the ground once. Well, don't be disappointed by it. My aura rank is also at medium high, but I'm still a grade 1 knight. The key is that the way you fight is more important. That was true. The amount of energy was nothing but a number, and making the most out of it in a real fight also required talent. Of course, at grades 5 and 6, it would be nigh impossible to overcome that gap. Let us begin now. I wish you all the best. Well, you won't die anyway, so if you really don't feel like doing this, you can just dash in and kill yourself. Along with the ominous words of Fermac, light covered my sight. Half of the darkness enveloping the Liberty Hall was lifted as the professors gathered in one place. There are a lot of gems this year, Professor Lalara of Alchemy said while looking at the students half encroached by the darkness. The signboards of grade 2 and grade 1. The freshmen that had been standing in front of those signboards were next to them without being isolated in the testing ground which had been infinitely expanded by Lady Josephine. 1 grade 1 and 4 grade 2s, huh? The young-looking blonde-haired beauty, Lady Josephine, looked at the remaining students of this place while lifting her monocle. Granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, Alicia Arden. Druid of Avalorn, Yule. Mercenary of Flying Swords, Doron Warsky. Golem Mage, Chronal Laden. They were geniuses who had been famous even before the admission. Considering how most of the professors of the Guardian Academy were grade 2 with only a few of them being at grade 1, it was possible to say that these students were as strong as a professor in terms of their ability. Of course, their ability to fight in an actual battle was a completely different matter, but it was clear that their talents were at the level of a genius already. However, this was one of the only 4 academies worldwide. Here, geniuses were overshadowed by even greater geniuses. Josephine turned towards the grade 1 signboard. There was a mysterious girl with a sharp gaze who was standing straight as if she had been straightened up by a right-angled ruler. Her nun clothes tightly tied by chains and her short hair were exactly the same as what Lady Josephine had seen in the past. She appeared like a temperamental cat from a distance, but Josephine was with the chairman of the academy, Arya Khazar, when first inviting her, so she knew her true identity. What is the chairman thinking? If not for the dozens of yellow talismans stuck on the entangled chains, even Lady Josephine would have been greatly against inviting this girl. Heavenly Yiksha, Horan. Night was not a suitable description for that girl. A ghastly aura that couldn't be concealed by the indifferent look on her face was devouring the nearby air. I suppose there would be no need to gauge your abilities. Please wait until everyone else is done with their test. Leaving behind the cream of the crop, Josephine and the remaining professors gazed into the dimension where the students had gone into. By the way, is there even a need to bother about these kids? One of the professors, Professor Ronan, said while looking at the students through one of the crystals. Most of the students were in grade 5, so he was evaluating them along with 3 other professors, but he was also in charge of the 4 grade 6 students. Honestly, wouldn't it be better to expel these ungifted students? Grade 5 was already quite useless, and grade 6 pretty much meant they were completely ungifted. They could only barely perceive even the most basic of astral bodies, so it was hard to make use of them. They were like pebbles who just happened to be awakened. Professor Ronan used his cold gaze to stare at the underachieving students whom he would not even consider as his disciples. He had also been hailed as a genius when he was young, and thus could not understand the minds of ungifted and normal students. Considering how education was meant to cultivate the wide range of students instead of focusing on the small number of geniuses, Professor Ronan was by no means a good educator. Lady Josephine heaved a sigh at the professors that were too much of an elitist and changed the atmosphere by slapping the air with her whip. It is the chairman who wants every student to walk down the path of education. Are you dissatisfied with anything? Any complaints? Professor Ronan closed his mouth. Just like other elitists, he became humble in front of someone who was more of an elite than him. But even Lady Josephine was unable to refute the words of Professor Ronan while looking at the boy with a ponytail stuck in the dimension she made. Grade 6. These ungifted students, which were as rare as the few geniuses, were usually unable to withstand the burden of a guardian. It would be great if they could even defeat grade 5 monsters. Monsters will come out in 30 seconds. Deal with them as you wish. Professor Ronan's indifferent voice reached my ears. All of a sudden, we were thrown into a white dimension with nothing but a case full of weapons to abruptly conduct a test. Most grade 5 and grade 6 students would probably pick up a random weapon without even thinking twice, but it was highly likely for that weapon to be a sword. That was the same even for me in last iteration's grading test, and approximately 70% of the students in the night department tended to choose a sword. After all, swords were cool, right? Let's see. I, however, unhesitatingly picked up a spear this time, because that was the weapon I used the most in the previous iteration. Actually, the reason I chose the spear before was quite simple. They say 100 days to master a spear, 1,000 days to master a blade, and 10,000 days to master a sword, right? I remembered reading from a wuxia novel how 100 days was enough to be proficient at using a spear, whereas a sword required 10,000 days. It's not like I didn't try using a sword, but it was actually quite difficult to use. 5, 4, 3. When I took a spear out of the weapon case, a new spear appeared inside. This was an element that wasn't included in the game, but it was Lady Josephine being considerate in case a weapon was to break. 2, 1. After a brief pause, monsters began appearing in the distance like a hologram. Showing up were 3 grade 5 demonic beasts that appeared like small hunting dogs with large fangs. Even though I thought 3 grade 5 monsters was a bit too much against a novice, a guardian was at least expected to defeat a monster that was right above their designated grade. For example, a grade 5 knight should be able to defeat 1 grade 4 demonic beast, and should also be able to deal with 3 monsters of the same grade even if they were to take some time. My evaluated rank was grade 6, so according to common sense, it would be great if I could even defeat one of those grade 5 shorthounds, let alone 3, but KRRRH. I've killed those guys way too many times already. Around 40 meters away? How nice. After calculating the distance between me and the shorthounds, I gently tossed a spear. Tung! Drawing a parabola behind its path, the spear accurately pierced through the head of one of the monsters. Thanks to the thousands and tens of thousands of experiences, the javelin precisely pierced through its target. KRRNG? The shorthound killed by the sudden spear was vanishing into a mist, and the startled monster next to that guy was the next one to die. KRRR. The remaining beast kicked off the ground and dashed forward. As a proficient master of spears, I immediately calculated our distance, its path and timing. 15 meters. It would be okay to deal with it with a javelin, but I wanted to try out rune magic instead. Gathering mana to my fingertip, I wrote a letter in the air. Ken S. The rune letter meaning fire was engraved in the air, and was followed by a scorching blaze. Warwick. KRNG? The short hound threw its body to the side and avoided the approaching flames as the fire ended up burning nothing but the poor ground. Damn. Was there not enough mana? Speed was also a problem. It was a long-time problem, but rune magic was not a good magic to use by itself. Well, things might be different if my mana rank went up though. Woof. After running up, the short hound pounced to tear my throat, but its movement was way too linear. Calculating the trajectory, I straightened up the spear at where it would land. Woof. The low scream in the middle of its jump was way too late. Squash. Leaving behind the short hound who jumped to the tip of the spear for its own death, I calculated how long it took. It took me about 12 seconds to deal with the grade 5 demonic beasts. Even though it was only possible thanks to the spears constantly popping up, it was still relatively fast. How far can I go this time? Although I failed in the last iteration because I couldn't kill the short hounds, this time it was different. The grading test should have demonic beasts and demonic spirits showing up in the ascending order of their grades, and there should be up to grade 3 prepared. I was waiting for the next wave to hurry up and appear, but for some reason, it was taking a very long time, even though it used to be very quick in the game. Is it broken? Even after waiting for a few minutes, the grade 4 monsters didn't show up. Instead, KRRNG, KRRRNNNG, woof woof, grade 5 monsters appeared again. Was this seriously broken? Professor Ronan didn't have high expectations of his allocated portion of students. He absent-mindedly followed Lady Josephine's settings to summon monsters and let them fight. While looking at the students struggling against the monsters, he clicked his tongue. TCH. What can they do if they can't even kill that? Seeing those kids that couldn't even readily deal with 3 grade 5 monsters made him heave a deep sigh. Back in my days, he reminisced in his memories of how he had dealt with those grade 5 monsters in just 1 minute and 22 seconds. Even though he was a grade 3 mage back then, this batch of students was still just horrendous. Quack. Help me. Although some of the students should be easily able to deal with grade 5 monsters, they were still failing to do so time after time. Even the ones that could fight them were taking their sweet time to defeat all 3 of them. Grade 5s are like that, so there's no need to even look at grade 6. While thinking that, Professor Ronan turned to the grade 6 students that were at the very end of the crystal balls. Judging from how all the screens were off, it seemed that they had all been defeated already. Pathetic. And then? That was when he saw a student sitting on a weapon case in a white room. Corinne Lork, grade 6. An ungifted pebble which would not even be able to serve as a stepping stone for the gems of the academy was yawning while leaning on a spear. What? How's he not dead yet? Let alone the other grade 6 students, 30% of the grade 5 students had already been defeated by the short hounds. Why did that one student look so normal? Did he get rid of all 3 short hounds already? There's no way. Even the grade 5 students weren't able to deal with it, so how would a grade 6 student have defeated those monsters already? More than anything, it was way too fast compared to the grade 5 students. Must be an error. Thinking that there must have been a problem with summoning the monsters, he assumed it was because of a bug. After summoning the grade 5 demonic beasts in his room, Professor Ronan turned to the screens of other students. He mindlessly glanced across the crystals and finally came across one person who succeeded at defeating the monsters. 7 minutes and 20 seconds, huh? It was a pathetic record. Even though all the students he was in charge of were grade 5 and grade 6, 7 minutes was still quite horrible. Looking at Professor Fermack, who was in charge of grade 3 students next to him, they all appeared to be defeating the monsters in 2-3 minutes. Slowly but surely, a few of them were successfully dealing with the grade 5 monsters, but that was when Professor Ronan turned to the side and doubted his eyes again. NNNN? Inside the screen, Corinne was still sitting on the weapon case. There were a few spears taken out of the case that were rolling on the floor, but that was it. What's going on? What is it? Professor Heyman Welsh walked closer with his typical obstinate voice. He was sometimes called instructor rather than professor and was respected by other professors, so even Professor Ronan had to be careful in front of him. It's nothing much, but this seems broken. Broken? That can't be. Lady Josephine's testing magic has never created an error in the last 20 years. You see, the demonic beasts aren't being summoned into this one specific room. That can't be. Old man Heyman observed the crystals. After immediately scanning across the screen with his refined vision, he found Corinne in the corner of the screen, who was nonchalantly sitting down by himself. Rank 6 in mana. Corinne Lork. Surprised he's not out yet, right? This guy who should have dropped out already is still sitting here. I'm sure the demonic beasts aren't being summoned. Action. Did you see it? HNN? Did you see the monsters not being summoned, Professor? No, but there's no need to, is there? He was grade 6. Grade 6 in mana would probably have a hard time to even be employed as a city guard. It didn't even make sense for a student like that to deal with grade 5 demonic beasts, and besides, defeating them in around 10 seconds while Professor Ronan was looking elsewhere was impossible. But that meant he didn't see it. Old Man Heyman immediately glared at him with a sharp gaze, so Professor Ronan quickly took a step back. All right. I'll have a clear look at it this time. It must be a bug, so I'll summon it again. Like that, Corinne had to do a third test against a group of short hounds. What is this? Is this on purpose? Corinne muttered inside the screen before raising 3 spears and tossing them one by one to pierce through each of the short hounds. 7.3 seconds. Professor Ronan doubted his eyes. In a fluster, he walked up to Professor Fermac, who was next to him checking his own batch of 20 grade 3 students. Hey, Professor Fermac. What's up? Anything wrong? Your students are already at grade 3 demonic beasts. Well, pretty much. Professor Ronan asked him after slight hesitation. Who was the fastest in your group of students? I didn't count, but this student here called Jaeger took around 3.5 minutes. Ah, I see. Why did you ask that? Nothing much. Professor Ronan blankly went back to observing his crystals. What am I doing? I need to summon the grade 4 demonic beast. Corinne Lork appeared to be decent at javelin. He disregarded it by thinking that he must be from a family of hunters or something, but he nonetheless concentrated on Corinne Lork's screen. The next demonic beast was a mat boar. It was an annoying beast to deal with, that curled its body and rolled around at max speed. This time, only one monster was summoned, unlike the grade 5 monsters, and that in turn showed how exponentially dangerous this monster was. Quack! 3.7 seconds. Ronan rubbed his eyes multiple times. He even used the spell, Return of Memories, to recall how Corinne Lork killed the mat boar in an instant. He had avoided the mat boar, which was rolling at full speed, like a bullfighter, and tripped it by pointing out the spear at a timely manner to fling the boar into the air. And as soon as the boar's body straightened up in midair, it received a spear to its stomach and crashed into the ground. It was a remarkable hunt done with only technique and a little bit of power. Although Professor Ronan tended to look down on those who fought with their own bodies, even he couldn't help but admire how exquisitely that was done. Walk! This is unfair. He also couldn't help but compare that to the other students who couldn't overcome the tough monster. So far, there were only 4 students who had passed the grade 4 demonic beast test. Next up was the grade 3 monster, Owlbear. It was a medium-ranked demonic beast who was widely considered a big threat because of its large body and a tough grip. It won't be easy this time. Owlbears had a thick skin that was hard to penetrate, and getting hit by its thick claws would fling off knights regardless of their barrier of aura. Quack. In fact, one of the students had already been insta-killed by the owlbear. He tried to block the attack with his shield, but the shield ended up breaking, and the impact that was carried over was so strong that he was deemed unable to continue. However, Corinne was different. Kawa! Without trying to parry the frontal paw swing of the bear, he lowered his head to dodge the attack and stabbed his spear into the armpit. And without getting greedy for more, Corinne immediately started to retreat and swung the spear out wide to strike the head of the owlbear while immediately falling back. Ken-s. His fingers left a trace behind in the air. The letter created with mana rapidly turned into a ball of ether that pounced at the owlbear. Rune magic? Professor Ronan's shout gathered the eyes of the surrounding professors, and Professor Fermac showed an especially bigger reaction by sharply glistening his eyes. Rune magic was one that had a clear limit and weakness. It was such an ancient system of magic which only scholars would take a look at while becoming a professor, so it was understandable for Professor Ronan to be surprised. Ignoring its own body that was caught in flames, the owlbear jumped at its prey. Due to the dreadfully low amount of mana, the magic that was cast in an instant was unable to show an astonishing outcome. However, the smoke created by its blazing fur was enough to cover its sight. In the end, the owlbear couldn't differentiate between the black smoke and the spearhead that was coming in like a small dot. Quack! That was what decided the victor. Corinne was the only survivor of the grade 3 test among Professor Ronan's students. At this point, he couldn't help but admit that this student was definitely not someone who should stay at the likes of grade 6. Unlucky, there's only up to grade 3 for the demonic beast test. Would he be able to defeat a grade 2 demonic beast as well? Even though Professor Ronan was skeptical, he couldn't disregard the possibility. As long as he doesn't make any big mistakes in the demonic spirit test, he would easily go up to grade 4. In the start of the semester grading test, the lowest record was used as the estimated rank. If he couldn't defeat a grade 4 demonic spirit, then he would be estimated to be a grade 4 even if he defeated a grade 3 demonic beast. Wondering how proficient this student called Corinne would be in a fight against a demonic spirit, Ronan summoned a grade 5 demonic spirit. That rune magic alone should be enough to easily defeat a grade 5 demonic spirit. He assumed it would be easy for him to reach grade 4 at least and focused on Corinne's screen, but Corinne Lork didn't do anything. And after a little while, I give up. The grading test has ended. The estimation of ranks and the organization of data has been completed. The records will now be put together. Student number 7, Roko Roko. Student number 14, Verdict Rumlow. Student number 19, Corinne Lork. Aura rank, low, 680. Mana rank, very low, 120. Specialties, nothing, 0. Overall grade, grade 6. Demonic Spirit Test. Grade 5 Demonic Spirit, Ghost, forfeit. Grade 4 Demonic Spirit, Hex Wraith, disqualified. Grade 3 Demonic Spirit, Banshee, disqualified. Demonic Beast Test. Grade 5 Demonic Beast, Shorthound, 7.3 seconds, new record. Grade 4 Demonic Beast, Matt Boar, 3.7 seconds, new record. Grade 3 Demonic Beast, Owlbear, 11 seconds, new record. Final overall grade, Grade 5 Knight, submission complete. The test records will now be scrapped for privacy and information protection. It might sound like I'm bragging when I say this, but I've been using a spear for quite some time in the previous iteration. Stabbing at the weak points of a monster was nothing difficult. What was important was that it was a lot easier to move my body compared to the previous iteration. My power, stamina and vision were all incomparably higher than what I had at the start of the previous iteration. It was thanks to the second aspect of the precept, I do not perceive spirits. Which amplified my strength against physical opponents. Next up are demonic spirits, It was the same as the restriction that man had in the previous iteration. I had to check if it was working properly. Grade 5 Demonic Spirit Test will now begin. Something must have been summoned immediately after the impassive voice of Professor Ronan, but I could neither see nor hear anything. It's going as expected so far. I was miserable at seeing astral bodies in the first place. No matter how much I raised my stats while following Park Sihu around, my ability to see astral bodies just did not get any better. I could only faintly sense their presence. In that popular game one referring to StarCraft everyone plays in Korea, the terrain gets blurry whenever there are invisible units walking by, right? That was exactly what it felt like to me. However, I couldn't even see that afterimage anymore. Anyone would generally feel a chill or feel spooked when nearby an astral body, but I couldn't feel anything. Next up was the battle. Sitting still, I defenselessly waited for the demonic spirit to approach me. 1 minute. Although I wasn't sure how fast the demonic spirit was, a minute would have been enough for it to approach me. And it probably would have done something to me. It might have used life drain that demonic spirits love the most or something like Soul Crusher. Well, a low-grade demonic spirit might not have such skills, but the point was that something should have long happened by now. It's working. Because of the rule of mutual cognition, the demonic spirit could not interfere with me because I couldn't perceive it in the first place. That made me certain. Demonic spirits would not be able to touch me no matter how strong they were, even a unique grade spirit would be powerless. The restriction of the precept was working like a charm. Good. I checked everything that needed to be checked, so it was time to hurry up and leave this test. There was no reason to let Professor Ronan know that I could not perceive demonic spirits, let alone how they could not even touch me. Of course, Professor Ronan would not even dare imagine that it could be impossible to perceive demonic spirits, but others might be different. I give up. After a while, I was able to see a crumpled look on Professor Ronan's face. Old man Heyman had been watching the crystals with Professor Ronan ever since he had a question. This guy's a gem. That was his impression of Corinne. His expert skills at hunting the shorthounds, his posture and the precise accuracy of his javelins were all remarkable, with zero room for negative feedback. That wasn't the end, his ability to insta-kill the Matt Boar and the Owlbear was astonishing. Even from the higher-graded knights, it was hard to find knights that were able to show such skill in an actual fight. Strange that he forfeited against the demonic spirits, but was there something he had in mind? Even Heyman could not imagine a guardian who could not perceive spirits, but his guess was somewhat correct. In the end, Corinne was given the title of a grade 5 knight, but that wasn't anything to be stressed about. A powerhouse at his level was bound to accomplish many things, and with those he would inevitably go towards the top. Ho ho, looks like my last few years are going to be exciting. How high up would he go? Old man Heyman let out a hearty laughter at unexpectedly coming across a hidden rising star. You. Alicia felt as if she was suffocating to death as she waited for her peers to complete their tests. Alicia Arden. Aura rank, upper medium, 6,800. Mana rank, lower medium, 1,300. Specialties, Eyes of the Boundary. Overall grade, grade 2. Final grade, grade 2 Knight. Her stats were definitely in the upper spectrum among knights, and she was a blessed and gifted child ever since her birth. However, the peers standing next to her were at a similar level if not higher than her. None of them were ordinary. Why is no one saying anything? I can't even hear them breathe. Everyone else was doing their tests, so they were the only people except for the professors, and yet not a single one of them was interested in other people. This was at least triple the awkwardness that existed at the start of the year in the normal academies she had gone to. There was a druid girl maintaining a bizarre gymnastic posture in meditation, a gloomy boy wearing a black robe caressing a muddy doll, and a former mercenary hanging 5 gleaming blades in the air while breathing like a beast. Scary. Why is everyone so bizarre? Are they really the same age as me? Alicia used to go to a normal academy until middle school. If her grandfather didn't suddenly drop a senile comment like, "Let's make Alicia a successor candidate as well," she definitely wouldn't have come to such a sinister academy. Cherry, Nobu, Topher. I miss you guys. The scariest of all was the girl who was literally doing nothing in this suffocatingly heavy atmosphere. Unlike her appearance that suggested she was from the east, she was wearing the clothes of a nun with chains restricting her on top of that. The chains weren't sealing her joints, and it seemed that they weren't there to restrict her movements. There was more. Dozens of yellow talismans were coiled around those chains. She looked extremely ominous if anything. The hair color of the chained nun girl was also strange. The outside was jet black and yet the inside was tainted in deep red. Did she dye her hair? It looked way too natural for it to be dyed hair, and Alicia was curiously staring at it when the sharp red eyes suddenly turned towards her. Eck. Meeting those deep eyes that seemed like they would lead to the endless abyss, Alicia felt a chill running down her spine. This is dangerous. We have a carnivore in a cage of herbivores. There is a scary predator. Benefactor. Are you there? Please save me one more time. While touching the belt tied around her martial art uniform, Alicia prayed to someone who would be too far to hear her. In the end, I was given the title of a grade 5 knight by Professor Ronan. He gave a deep scowl when he saw me, who had forfeited at grade 5 demonic spirit test after defeating a grade 3 demonic beast, but there was nothing I could do about it. Professor Ronan constantly glared at me as if he was discontent by me forfeiting at the grade 5 demonic spirit test, but nonetheless, the highest grade I could get after not defeating a grade 5 demonic spirit was grade 5. I was leaving after getting my student ID cards updated to grade 5 knight and found students chatting to each other. Oi, what grade did you get? Grade 4. I fucked up. What about you? Huhu. Grade 3. Wow. So you killed both an owlbear and a banshee? Look at them. They're grade 5. Ihyo, how do you even get grade 5? After Lady Josephine's grading test, we received our grades from the professors in charge and lined back up according to our given grades. There were only 30 students standing in front of the grade 5 signboard where I was. In front of the grade 3 board were around 20 people, which meant there were approximately 350 students who got grade 4. Huhut. Most of the grade 3 students couldn't hide their arrogant gazes. The one who stood out the most was a delinquent-looking student with very short hair and an impressive tattoo on the back of his neck. Oh, it was someone I knew. Jaeger Hinspeter. He was a grade 3, and his specialty was something like accumulated destruction, where you build energy inside by landing attacks and explode it in one go. It was a specialty we didn't even get to see in the game because of him quickly becoming irrelevant, but now that this was the real world, it should be possible to have a look at his abilities since we will be training in the same class. His role in Heroic Legends of Arhan was picking a fight with the player at the start of the story, only to be smashed in an instant. He preferred a heavy armor and a mace, and had a tattoo on his neck. Also, his mother is a tattooist. How did I know that, you may ask? It was because 3 years ago, his parents and his younger sister had come to the academy when he went missing in the first semester. They used their own money to try to find Jaeger, and that scene had left quite a big impression on me back then. He was one of the people Park Sihu killed for annoying him. That fucking cidery psychopath. Although Jaeger had a bit of an attitude, he was definitely not a big enough sinner who deserved to die. He was a typical delinquent and a demi-human racist, but he was not a massive bully, and he was just in the rough and unstoppable moments of his youth. He was just a young and immature kid compared to the actually terrible delinquents whose lives were a series of sexual assaults and robberies. He had some skill and was a grade 3 knight. Looking down on peers who had a lower grade and feeling superior was quite common in his age. Those are the days, you know. Look. They are grade 5. Wow, how do you get that? So some people do lose to short hounds and ghosts, huh? Jaeger wasn't the only one with such an attitude, and most of the students were the same. There was always at the very bottom. Grade 4 students, which was the majority of students, sent condescending gazes at the grade 5 students, whereas the grade 5 students who were at the very bottom dropped their heads in embarrassment and frustration. They would at least hit grade 4 before graduation, and that was already considered quite good outside. Even though they might be treated like trash here, they were still superhumans outside. None of them would be starving to death no matter what they did anyway, but as expected of kids who had yet to suffer from the unemployment crisis, their perception of their future was very optimistic. But well, that's what kids should be like. It would be great if their embarrassment and frustration would act as a positive catalyst for their growth, but Lark's also here. Typical nerd glasses and freckles, up to there it was normal, but the skull spellbook in his hands was definitely a telltale sign that he was a severe Chinibu patient. The reason he died was because he framed me and Siho after giving in to his inferiority complex. I was wondering whether I should kindly let him participate in the enlightening method of Soviet Russia when the mic started to go off at the stage. Kuhum. There was a man testing the mic and the voice amplification magic. Good morning, freshmen. I am the chairman, Arya Kazar. Let me make this brief. There was no sign of him showing off his authority in his composed voice and the expressionless look on his face. He was respectful and dignified. He looked young, but there was an underlying layer of composure which made it difficult to discern his age. Chairman of Merkava Academy, Arya Kazar. The strongest helper and bystander of the main quest. It had truly been a very long time. In this academy, you will be learning the most intense and the most dangerous techniques of the world. Some of you might already be strong, and some of you might not be as strong. I cannot guarantee you that everyone will achieve their goals. The students created a fuss in response to the chairman's words. However, I do wish that everyone here may discover the correct direction of their lives. Our job is to help you take that first step. Starting from the second step, it will be up to you. That's it from me. Hope you have a wonderful day. With that, the chairman left the stage. There was a short break after the chairman's speech, which the freshmen used to get to know each other. I am a grade 3 knight, Jaeger Hinspeter. You see. Among the freshmen was a guy who showed off his grade and bragged about himself. As well as a gloomy nerd flipping the pages of a spell book in the corner. In the previous iteration, I had close to 0 friends because of that damned park, because I was forced to stay next to him the whole day. Gosh. Thinking of how there was a hidden desire concealed behind all that gave me goosebumps. I was glancing around to check whether the kids that died to park were doing okay or not, and saw Jaeger striking up a conversation with Lark. Oi, what grade are you? Who, huh? Lark was flustered from the sudden chat and slowly closed the spell book. Thinking back, I remembered how Jaeger picked a fight with grade 5 students on the first day. Gee, grade 5. Grade 5? So you're a weakling. Jaeger condescendingly gave a remark while Lark was shivering in front of the tattooed delinquent. Oh, it felt like I was back to being a teenager. Such immaturity was refreshing. Did you fail at killing the ghost? I suppose you could have been scared because some of them do look like a grade 3. I wasn't though. Ah, huh? Wait, did you die to the short hounds and not the ghost? For real? Oh ha ha ha. I was watching with an intrigued expression, but Lark tightened his fist and looked fairly upset. He wasn't the only one. The small group of students that received grade 5 in the test were embarrassed about their ranks, which were easier counted from the bottom. You know what? I killed those weak-ass short hounds in like 3 minutes. Hello, friends. I suddenly wrapped my arms around them. Neither of them noticed me until I touched them. UHT? W, what? The two of them rolled their eyes in surprise from my sudden approach. What was I supposed to do with these young teenage boys? Why, who are you? Lark took a step back after seeing my face. It wasn't clear whether he was surprised by my jump scare or my appearance. That tattoo looks pretty sick. Who, huh? Looks neat. The one who did it must be very good at it. Huh? Yeah? Right? I praised the tattoo and gave a compliment to the one who did it, which was highly likely to be his mother. He wouldn't have expected me to know about the tattooist, so it must have sounded like a genuine compliment to him. Plus, his tattoo was not just there for show. That thing on the back of your neck is the symbol for your blood type, right? To get a blood transfusion as quickly as possible when you get hurt, yeah? Damn, you're prepared. Yeah, right. The reason I knew this was because I had talked to Jaeger's parents before. Because Park and I were the last ones to see Jaeger, we were summoned a few times. Jaeger's tattoo was proof of his parents' concern for their son who was entering the Guardian Academy. Park Siho, that fucking psychopath. Acting like nothing happened in front of Jaeger's parents. Actually, this is what my mom did for me. She's more of a line work specialist, but she did it old school for me. That looks excellent. Do you have more? Yeah. I did one on my arm. It's the symbol of Merkarva Academy, and has a chariot flying through the sky. Pulling his sleeves, Jaeger bragged about his tattoo. As he said, there was a chariot and a sky behind it, which was the symbol of Merkarva Academy, imprinted on his right arm. After that, I just listened to Jaeger excitedly talk about himself. Although I didn't really know the technical terms like line work and old school, what I knew was that you only needed to give energetic nods to be a great listener. I'm Corinne Lork. Jaeger Hinspeter. He found out what my grade was during the conversation, but unlike what he did with Lark, he didn't even mention it. People generally did not bother badmouthing someone who they had a good impression of. Because of that, he didn't continue picking a fight against Lark, who was in the same grade as me. Action. That should have left a positive first impression. This guy, Lark, if I remember correctly, his specialty was memorize. He would be of great help. He was the way for me to access the grimoire, the free skill book. Alicia had a low self-esteem and was bad at expressing her opinion. That was why, despite her strength, she became timid in front of her impressive peers and couldn't speak up to them. She had been worn out and harassed by the people of her household that supported her older sister. How can someone like you be at the same position as Lady Lunia? Due to being the illegitimate child of the current head of the family, Gerard Arden, and the child of a concubine, she had been faint-hearted from a young age. She was always compared to her smart sibling, harassed and mocked. She was the young lady of the household, but there was no weight behind that title. Grade 5? So you're a weakling. Ah, he looks like a delinquent. He even has a tattoo. Feeling like her PTSD was coming back up, Alicia forced herself to turn her head away from him. It was because there used to be a lot of people in the household who had tattoos. She thought there would be no one saving that poor boy, like what happened to her. That tattoo looks pretty sick. Who, huh? That was when another boy showed up. The peer called Corinne Lork, who was assigned as a mere grade 5 knight, approached the delinquent-looking Jaeger without any hesitation. He complimented his tattoos, gave deep nods and skillfully led the conversation with Jaeger. Everyone watching knew that Corinne had stepped in to help his peer from being harassed. Incredible. He didn't rely on strength, nor did he try to talk down or criticize the opponent. The boy had gotten rid of the seed of harassment in a very adept manner. Even though he was also a grade 5 himself, and even though he should have known that he could have become the next target, he still stepped up for his peers. Today must have been the first day they met. He had never even talked to Lark before. Although he would be getting nothing in return, he took a step forward nonetheless. That boy called Corinne even gave off a sense of dignity and experience. What a nice person. Showing non-calculative kindness that gives a good impression. Was it just a coincidence that he reminded her of the benefactor she met in the forest? Most of the facilities of Merkarva Academy were available for free. The student cafeteria was cheaper than the fast food restaurants outside, and although there were different tiers for the dormitory, they did not charge any money. Since the students were sometimes dispatched to dangerous missions under the name of work experience, the academy gave utmost support for everything else. The training rooms was one of them. In this academy where students were given a lot of free time, the training room which was open for all the students was the most recommended facility out of the entire campus. Is there a room? Yes, there. Freshman? The staff at the reception tilted his head after seeing my student ID card. It was understandable for him to be confused because it would have been rare to see a freshman come to the training room on the first day of the admission. After all, it was strange for freshmen to even know about the training room. What size would you like? Please make it XL. Is there a weapon that you would like to borrow? Do you have a spear? It'd be great if it was around 2 meters. So the normal one. There are all sorts of weapons in the weapon container, so please feel free to take them as you wish. Do you have an elemental body as well? An elemental body? Ah, we do, but... The staff tilted his head. He seemed curious about how I got to know about that, but there was another thought mixed into his gaze. It was the thought that it would be meaningless even if I were to take it. After changing into a more comfortable outfit, I picked up a spear and went inside, and was welcomed by a gym that was bigger than most stadiums. Kang, Kong, Warwick, Kawang. Waiting for me inside were all sorts of savage noises which were made by the students training themselves. The training rooms looked like a tennis court where every student could train in their own rooms. It was wide open and was only divided by glass panes. Of course, there weren't enough rooms for all the students of the academy to use, so you had to be quick on busy hours like the weekend. In other words, considering how rowdy the academy was due to the recent addition of freshmen, right now was the only chance to use such a luxurious room by myself. I tried swinging the training spear, which was relatively sharp. In the previous iteration, I used to swing around a spear every day. It seemed that I was unexpectedly quite talented at using spears. You started too late, and you must train harder to make up for it. I only got to learn spearmanship after getting an official master introduced to me by Park, but that was already very late. Wake up. Time to get to work. Placing the small egg I received from the front reception on the ground, I tapped it a few times. This was an object that was possessed by an elemental. In this world, elementals could manifest themselves in two ways. The first was by materializing their bodies by receiving mana from an elementalist after an official contract. In this case, they would add flesh to their astral bodies and allow me to see them as well. The second was by possessing objects like the one in front of me. In this Guardian Academy, which encouraged students to pursue an intense training session, they provided various elemental bodies that were okay to be broken after a contract with the spirit realm. Hee hee, hee hee. Along with the sound which resembled the chuckling voice of a child, wings began to appear behind it. Whying! The elemental body floated up with an intimidating set of noises. The elemental possessing this egg was a common low-grade wind elemental. But due to the physical body, it was as fast as a mid-grade elemental despite having no way of fighting back. Oi, look at that. What is it? There's a freshman training with an elemental body. I could feel the gazes of the senior students of the academy that were using the training room. The emotion concealed behind their voices was not surprise but mockery at the bravado of a junior. Don't you start that at like the second semester? He probably heard it from somewhere. As they said, freshmen generally started training with an elemental body starting from the second semester, and the reason for that was quite simple. It was because it would be meaningless to make students try something impossible. Hup! The elemental body easily dodged my thrusted spear. It wasn't just a dodge either. After reading the trajectory of my spear, it shifted its body at the last second to dodge the spear with a gap of 0.1 centimeters to make fun of me. See that? There are plenty of second-year students who find it hard against wind elementals. What does that freshman think he is? That was why elemental bodies were only used starting from the second semester. The superior cognitive ability and the overwhelming dodging ability complemented by the physical body itself were ridiculous. Telling a first-year student to catch that was the same as commanding a newborn baby to race against a bicycle. It might be possible for famous geniuses, but it was so difficult that most average students would not even be able to reach it after becoming a second-year student. Chic. I swung my spear again, but both the timing and the speed fell short. The elemental body easily dodged it to a corner and instead drove its body into my forehead. It was clearly playing around with me, coot. It had no offensive ability and thus didn't hurt very much, but the dejection left behind by the sense of defeat was not small. However, I wasn't discouraged because this was just a test for me to retrieve the senses I had in my previous iteration. If I was going to be discouraged by something like this, I wouldn't have pledged to save the world. I at least wanted to improve my spearmanship back up to the basic level. Thinking that, I was preparing myself to thrust the spear one more time when a bright voice echoed from the entrance and reached my ears. Hi, everyone. You are working hard as always. Huh? Marie? You are quite early today. Are you here for training? NNNN. There was something I've been doing during the holiday. Oh right, do you want some snacks? Marie unhesitatingly opened her basket of snacks. Endlessly coming out of the basket were steamed potatoes, corn, sweet potatoes, and seasonal vegetables. You must have been working hard. Here you go. A wet towel. Thank you. A second-year student of the night department blushed while receiving the wet towel from Marie, who soon also walked up to me. Junior. I remember you. We saw each other in the morning, right? Yes. Senior Dinaref. It's my first time seeing a freshman come to the training room on the first day. Back in my days, we were busy playing, she said with a bright smile and naturally created a positive atmosphere in the blink of an eye. Do you want some steamed potatoes? I have sugar as well. I have it this time, she added with a wide smile. Even though I was a year below her and today was our first day seeing each other, she blew away the awkwardness in a single second like it was nothing. Thanks for the food. As soon as I took the steamed potato from her hands, her white fingers gently sprinkled sugar on top of the potato. White sprinkles of snow fell on top of the yellow flesh of the hot and steamy potato. A sugared potato was a delightful dish. I was munching through it when Marie handed over a cup with water in a timely manner. You need water, right? Slow down. Thank you. That was when Marie spotted the elemental body and tilted her head. Huh? That's... Seeing an elemental body which everyone was bound to know after going through the first-year curriculum, Marie tilted her head. Are you practicing with that? Yes. Is there a problem? No? It seems you are trying very hard. She shook her head in a fluster, seemingly worried about giving an impression that she was looking down on me. Turning away from the entrance of my room, to be exact, after turning away from the crowd who was here to talk to Marie, I picked the spear back up when a new voice echoed from behind. Huh. It was too dignified for it to be a student's voice, and there was an undisguisable sign of stubbornness in his old voice. Huh? Instructor Heyman? Professor Heyman, who had disheartened the freshmen at the entrance ceremony, was glaring at me. Corinne Lork. Freshman, aren't you? Nice to meet you, Sir Instructor. Old man Heyman twitched his lips after being unexpectedly called an instructor rather than a professor. Even though the academy was divided into the sectors, Night Department and the Magic Department, everyone teaching the students were called professors. Professor Heyman was also a professor himself, but he did not like that title because of how ink-stained that seemed. Why are you practicing with an elemental body? Corinne Lork. I'm practicing spearmanship. I need to hit that. Pfft. The sunbays behind old man Heyman in the background bursted into sneers. They appeared to be thinking of it as the bravado of an ignorant newbie. Guys, stop. It's normal for him to not know how hard it is. Marie tried to stop the senior students in concern that it might hurt my feelings, but she was also under the impression that I was doing something meaningless. Have you learned spearmanship before? What sect are you from? Just some Bagua back in my village. Bagua, the 8 trigrams, was one of the combined martial arts you could learn as a second-year student. Truth be told, that was what I learned as the foundation, and the spearmanship I actually mastered was 6 integrated spears and the void, but that wasn't something I could mention in front of old man Heyman. I could not reveal myself yet in front of old man Heyman and the 2 old-timers of the academy. They might accidentally think of me as the underling of that guy. Are you confident that you can pull it off? Whether I'm confident or not is not of importance. I'll have to do it. I came here because I needed to do it. Old man Heyman seemed satisfied by my response and grinned. Haha, that's what I like to hear. I like that attitude. I'll give you 10 meal tickets. He took out a bunch of meal tickets from his coarse leather purse. It seemed that I had left a good impression on him. Come look for me if you succeed. I shall give you a reward. Old man Heyman showed his goodwill through food. It was evident from how he liked taking his favorite students to restaurants. Even though having a meal with a stubborn old man would normally be a toil, he was surprisingly the type of person who did not interrupt during meals. Besides, he was a gourmet who only ate expensive food. If I told him of my success, he would probably give me a voucher for a fabulous restaurant outside the campus. Even in the game, he used to give the voucher for a famous restaurant in Mercarva City as a reward for building rapport. Ads by Pub Future. Old man Heyman left to take care of the training room while I stayed behind and stared at the elemental body. The seniors were still scoffing at me while guaranteeing that I would fail and, good luck. I hope you succeed. Marie, the only one who wished me good luck, went into her own room after leaving those words behind. Elemental bodies had no eyes. Their world functioned under a different principle compared to the human world. They used mana to perceive the world unlike the 5 senses of a human. This was the same even after possessing an elemental body. An elemental body possessed by a wind elemental reacted to attacks by feeling the vibrations of the wind to discern the ripples of the air. Because of that, it was a lot more agile and sustainable than the likes of the sense of sight. It did not fall to faints and there was no need for it to move excessively, which was why it could last longer with the same amount of stamina. And thus, the elemental body of a wind elemental was the best practice target for knights and mages. No matter how strong an attack was, it would be meaningless if it didn't land on the target. Hitting the elemental body of a wind elemental which excelled in avoiding attacks was proof of the accuracy. But that in turn meant it was extremely difficult, because one would need techniques, hard work and a capable body for accuracy. Viewing. The elemental body dodged the spear with an intimidating noise from its wings. Every time, it dodged a little bit to the side as if mocking the attacker and proved the nasty personalities of elementals. I have the technique, but I don't have the body to pull it off. The body was the problem. The body of Corinne Lork was way too weak. Both the aura rank and the mana rank were at the very bottom. Because of the lack of aura, I couldn't reinforce my body, and I also couldn't use any skills that required mana because of the lack of mana. With my stats which were below average, I had no choice but to embed everything into each of my strikes, and every failure added more frustration and fatigue to my body and made it heavier. Look at him. He's still doing it. He hasn't even scraped it yet. Can he even touch one of the wings? Why is he still doing that though? Probably too embarrassed to quit now. Ignoring the derisive remarks, I thrusted my spear, but it pierced through the thin air. Facing the elemental body that didn't even seem sincere in its escape anymore, I used the rotational power of my shoulders and my waist for an accelerated side sweep. Swish! It sliced through the air. I averted my gaze looking for the vanished elemental body and turned back after feeling some weight on the tip of my spear. Tumble tumble. The elemental body rolled down from the tip of my spear and crashed into my face. KNNG. Greater than the pain was the humiliation. It was completely looking down on me. If I was strong enough to be at the same level as how I was in my second year before the regression, I wouldn't have been humiliated to this level. I miss the times when I used to consume all sorts of stuff. I used to have all sorts of miraculous medicine and potions while following Park Sihu around. My hands looked for a towel to wipe the rainfall of tears when a wet towel was placed on top of my hand. It was Marie. Are you tired? The girl with turquoise hair said after crouching next to me as I laid down with my limbs out wide on the ground. Is it very hard? Hugh. Yes, it is. It's all right to take some rest. You've been working hard enough already. Marie floated a bitter smile while handing over a cup of water that was created through magic. Hugh. No. Why? She appeared to be pitying me for receiving the flood of scoffs and sneers from the seniors. Marie was the only one here who wasn't sneering at me. Are you heading off for your meal? I hope you enjoy your meal. I'll leave after trying a bit more. Is it because you're embarrassed? It's fine. No one's going to say anything. You've been working hard. You will make it next time. Action. That's not it. There was a look of increasing doubt and puzzlement on her face. You're quite tired, aren't you? It's just not working out for you right now, Junior. You'll be able to do it next time. You can just give it another shot later. She wasn't wrong. And it was also true that I was being stubborn. My body was heavy like it was a metal piece. My arms carrying the spear wobbled and there was blood flowing out of my ripped palms. I thought back on what I was like 3 years ago. 3 years ago, when I first possessed this body, I would have floundered my arms around while barely chasing after the elemental body. Compared to that, my current self was probably a lot better off because I could at least show some signs of spearmanship. But back then, it was alright. 3 years ago, there was Park Sihu. We had a player, and a system window. There were also potions from the crafting window as well as the skills tab. But not anymore. There was no Park Sihu. I killed him. Now, I had to do everything by myself. I couldn't stop from something like this. It's not late to give up after you've tried until the very end, right? There was hope. I was fairly used to it now and there were 4 hours left until the curfew. Analyze and attack. Both now and before, that was the only thing I was good at. When I first came into this world, I was very desperate. A body that was barely at the level of a knight and a weak mind, without any compensations, I learned how to fight in order to protect myself. The reason I chose a spear was because it was the easiest to learn. I had nothing to believe in except for Park Sihu, the player, and the things I knew about the future. But when I had to confront all the monsters and geniuses of the main scenario, I was frightened. So what if the protagonist was next to me? So what if I knew about the future? Those were completely meaningless. To survive through the main story where spells and swords came flying at my face at every waking moment, the things I had were nowhere near enough. My 3 years were seriously one hell of a hard time. Even though my master tried to teach me using wise words like look at the forest, and not the trees, but following that wasn't easy when my life was constantly on the line. The tricks I learned to survive became a habit, and that habit became permanent over time. Master's consistent philosophical advice sounded like nothing but empty words, but I had a rough gist now. Strength and the nature of an ability is not what we need to reach the heart of Tao. Your talents are not that simple. It is greatly different, Anne. I didn't have a strong body, nor did I have an enormous amount of mana or aura. I had no unprecedented specialty either. Incompetent and weak. An ungifted man who could not seek a simple increment in power through numbers. Hugh. The spear in my 2 hands was warm. After being swung a few times, it was heated up from the friction and dripping beads of sweat. I had seen countless geniuses, and was now the enemy of astounding powerhouses. In order to overcome it without the overpowered traits of a player, the only option left was for me to become stronger as the only one who knew about the future. Vuing. The elemental body was not something I could keep up with for now. My fastest stab was slower than its movement, and therefore, what was needed was an analysis instead of my strength. Analyze. Analyze myself and analyze the enemy. Do not overly rely on the body. Remember the distance and calculate the trajectory. Contemplate every method possible to make it reach the enemy. Rather than speed, the reason why elemental bodies were difficult to hit was because of its ability to identify the vibrations in the air and its flying skills that let it avoid attacks in the best way possible. Attack from the right and it will dodge to the left. Although it might sound obvious, an elemental body could make that happen 100% of the time and was therefore impossible to hit unless one is way faster than it. That was why being able to destroy an elemental body meant one had the strength to overpower an elemental body. However, was that really the only method to defeat an elemental body? A spear was a simple weapon. Stab, swing, retaliate, spin, throw. Ominous snake. Tiger's gust. Trap and stab. Spinning heaven. Crumbling mountain. Those were the 5 basic ways of the spear. Out of the dozens of derivative attacks, I looked for the most suitable one. One that could allow me to ignore the lack of my stats. Secrets of Ominous Snake, Distorted March. Leaving behind the boy who stayed stubborn until the end, Marie headed to the academy cafeteria with her colleagues. Did you see him? The guy that was floundering his arms trying to keep up to the elemental body? Ah, you mean the freshman, right? How long did it take for you? It took less than an hour for me. Me? I did it in 2 hours. Bullshit. Didn't it take more than 6 hours or something? No? The freshman at the training room was eye-catching in both good and bad ways to the seniors. He became a bad-mouthing topic for them on their way to the cafeteria. Pretty sure Marie did it in an instant last year, right? NN? Dude, you can't even compare that to Marie. She got hers in less than a minute. I once saw Marie dropping 10 in an instant in the training room. A genius is just in a whole different league, I guess. Marie Denereff. She was the strongest mage among the second-year students, and was one of the few grade 1 students of the academy. Her status was incomparable to that of other students. But that boy called Corinne was trying really hard. He was. Marie gave a bright smile hearing the acknowledgement of his effort from her peer. She was about to explain Corinne's incredible tenacity but... It's just bravado though. Yeah, he's just trying to be cool. Probably because everyone was hailing him for being a knight from his youth. There is no way a grade 5 can even hit that. He probably won't land a hit until his graduation. He's grade 5. At best, he would be at grade 4 by his graduation. They all said the same thing, that he was just stubbornly attempting the impossible. But, isn't it amazing? He might really succeed with all his hard work. Marie, you're saying that because you're a genius. It's normal for average people to be unable to do that. People need to know how to be modest and give up. What if you break your own body by pushing yourself like that? It's best to not even try doing the impossible. They sounded cold-hearted but Marie could tell where they were coming from. Unable to come up with words to refute their arguments, Marie pouted and pursed her lips. If he began at grade 5, there's pretty much zero hope for him. Instead of having false hope, he should instead look for a workplace for post-graduation. Was that really the case? She deeply pondered to herself while walking after her friends. Marie was a so-called genius. Her inborn sensitivity to mana was amplified after entering Merkava Academy. She passed a grade promotion test in just 1 semester. In her bright and sunny world, there had been no despair and frustration. Hard work? The girl was already a hard worker. As a daughter of an agricultural family, and as the oldest child out of 3 sons and 4 daughters, Marie was definitely not a lazy girl. She was gifted and also had hard work. Without being content with grade 1, she was urged by her desire for improvement and various experiences to seek perfection. That was why the girl, who was praised as a genius, thought to herself, if I failed as much as that boy, would I be able to stay diligent without falling to despair? Even if she were to sweat like a storm and be unable to deal with a mere elemental body, would she still be able to stand back up on her shivering legs? It was a future that was difficult to imagine for the girl who had always been distant from the word desperation. Good night, Marie. Marie, we have an orientation tomorrow, right? See you then. The lime juice you gave me last time was amazing. After the meal, Marie fully enjoyed the relaxed air of the start of semester and energetically waved her hands to bid farewell. She had to separate from her friends because her dormitory was in the central streets. She was walking down the central streets which had all sorts of restaurants, stores and entertainment facilities when she suddenly thought of the training room boy. I wonder if he's still doing it. The sky was already turning dark and it was about time for magic carriages to stop doing rounds around the city. Soon, it would be the curfew so he should have gone back already. Marie was unconsciously under the impression that there was no way Corinne would have succeeded and packed up already, because hitting an elemental body was too challenging a task for a grade 5 freshman. He didn't look like he would give up though. It was on the way to the dormitory so, she decided to drop by. Ms. Marie? I lost something. Really? Lost property is over there. No, no, no. It was in a corner so you probably didn't see it. While pretending to head to the training room she used, Marie stole a glance at the room Corinne was in. Pong! The sound clearly reverberating across the corridor made Marie doubt her ears. Is he still doing it? It had already been a few hours since she had left with her friends. How was he still doing it? Marie walked towards his room and immediately saw the elemental body racing towards the boy. She-ick. He threw a sharp stab intending on piercing through the elemental body. Seeing how it was a lot faster than before, Marie doubted her eyes. Defeating an elemental body was possible for most people as long as they had enough tenacity and hard work. What was necessary was a moment of concentration, and a fundamental level of analysis for the movement and speed of the elemental body. She-eek. However, that was something which was only applied to the average people. There were actually quite a lot of people that were below average. Even some of the grade 4s were below average, let alone a grade 5. And Corinne Lorque, who had initially received grade 6, was a lot below average. Swish! The elemental body easily dodged the second stab. Even though he should be tired, Corinne delivered the third stab. Chic. Due to having no eyes, the elemental body relied on the air, vibrations and the ripples to avoid the incoming attacks with a little margin. Because of that, there was something the elemental body couldn't tell, which Marie could. Huh? Marie doubted her eyes. Those 3 stabs, because she had a dynamic vision which was even better than most knights, she noticed the intention behind them. Secrets of Ominous Snake, Distorted March. She realized that the 3 stabs at the elemental body were in fact not trying to pierce through it in the first place. A prison of spears? The ripples formed by those 3 stabs which the elemental body dodged with a tiny margin became a prison that blocked the escape paths of the elemental body. The aftermath and the rippling air remained even after the retrieval of the spear and stopped the elemental body from escaping to those places. It literally was a prison of spears. The 3 stabs which looked like a miss were in fact thoroughly planned attacks that tried to push the elemental body into a corner. A prison that the elemental body could not escape from due to being an existence that relied on the ripples of the air instead of its vision. A 4th stab? No, it's too late. 3 stabs appeared to be his limit. He was late at withdrawing the spear, and by the time he tried to stab again, the elemental body slightly shifted itself away from the trajectory of the spear. But this time, it wasn't a stab. The spear curved as he swung it horizontally. By using the rotational force of his shoulders and his waist, he accelerated the spear and added slight footwork into the mix to create an exceptionally rapid attack. Without letting it escape, he tried to slash the wings off, but, thanks to her superhuman sight, Marie saw the elemental body folding its wings right before coming into contact with the spearhead. It folded its wings. That's unfair. The spearhead slashed through the thin air as the elemental body reopened its wings, seemingly in contempt. It appeared to be condescendingly sending him the message, good try, but not quite. Unlike the derisive elemental body, Marie was in awe at the improvement of her junior as she tightened her fists. She wanted to cheer for him. Her perception was that diligent people deserved joy and applause. Like how she unknowingly cheered for the turtle in a race against a hare which she saw back when she was young. Marie cheered for Corinne. You can do it. The elemental body fluttered its wings thousands of times in a split second and tried to escape, which meant it would soon be out of Corinne's range. Ah! A sigh left her mouth. She did not see a future where he could land a hit on the elemental body after it resumed its flight. It was too late. The spear that was swung for the umpteenth time was still too late. Corinne was evidently using everything in his arsenal. He had used every bit of power left in his body to imprison the elemental body. He must have been confident that his horizontal swing would seal the deal. His feelings caused by that confidence backfiring on him due to a failure was not something she, as an unfailing genius, could imagine. Was she supposed to console him? Maybe she should have brought some potatoes? Let's go tell him it was great, tell him he was awesome. Let's praise him for his hard work, and encourage him that it will work out next time. It was right when she was thinking that. In an instant, the spear bounced up at an unbelievable speed. The explosive jump of the spear was like a jumping grasshopper. It was a trick, caused by his foot kicking on the shaft of the spear. That traveled slightly faster than the elemental body which was just about to pick up speed. Slam! The body was shattered as its fragments came raining down, and Marie then saw a dumbfounded wind elemental vacantly staring at its shattered body. She was speechless, and after a while, a wide smile appeared on her lips. That's great. He actually did it. Like what she did on the day she saw the turtle beating the hare, Marie gazed at the diligent turtle with a bright smile. One of the common senses in her mind had been cracked. Words like strong and remarkable were too commonplace to suit him. An honest impression that could be expressed in one word left her mouth. Awesome. The boy would not need any consolation or consideration. Without a word, Marie turned around and headed to her dormitory. Distorted march, tiger's gust, spinning heaven. I picked up the shattered fragments of the elemental body. Following the contract, the elemental inside this egg would have already returned to the empty spirit realm. Wasn't expecting to pull off a skill that I couldn't even use in the previous iteration. Even though it wasn't the true void, I caught a glimpse into the domain. Can I reach it this time? The heart of Tao? The spearmanship granted by my master in the previous iteration, even though I wasn't able to fully master it back then, it might be possible this time. I could go immediately, but that would be too suspicious. In fact, the only reason I was able to meet her was because of Park Sihu's introduction. Right now, I had nothing with me that could pull the attention of my master. Looking back, I remembered that she used to give a fairly harsh evaluation for Park Sihu. That guy is no good. He has zero guts. My regret is that I was too late in taking you in. Her eyes for people were accurate thanks to all the years she lived, but that was something I didn't pay attention to back then. This must be why you should always listen to your elders. Crack. I was heading to the front desk to return the spear, but the shaft suddenly crumbled and fell on the floor. This damn practice spear had terrible durability. I had used just a tiny bit of aura in fear that my body wouldn't be able to handle it, and yet the spear ended up breaking. I guess what I need first and foremost to fight properly is a good physique. There was only one thing I could rely on to increase my physical strength without relying on the elixirs of Park. Precept. The clause that I will not disregard the misfortune of the good. While heading to the dormitory, I gazed at the Merkava Great Library, which stayed bright through the darkness of the night. Next morning, freshmen were actually granted free time. The first day was designed to break the spirits of the new students and leave a strong impression of this place, whereas the second day was for students to be guided throughout the systems of the academy and the nearby facilities by the professors and senior students. Hello Junior. Marie was energetic today as well and welcomed the freshmen, including me, without showing any signs of exhaustion. For some reason, I felt like she wasn't here in the freshman orientation last time, but that might be just due to my bad memories. It was already 3 years ago, and it was natural for her to have a lot of free time as a senior high-achieving student with plenty of free credits. It wasn't strange for one of the top high achievers of the second-year students, Marie, to help out with the newcomers. After a short orientation in the morning, the afternoon was a full-on free time. The freshmen formed groups and were given the time to get to know each other. Some bravely looked for people to have lunch with, while some made friends from the same grade under a sense of kinship. Jaeger, a grade 3 knight, grouped up with people similar to him as expected, while the grade 5 mage Lark was left out as I thought. Unable to socialize with others, he headed to the cafeteria by himself. Actually, it was the same for most of the other grade 5 students. Scorn and contempt for the underachieving students who had been assigned grade 5 in the first grading test was already prevalent across the freshmen. Lark Bugman. I knew of his inferiority complex. Seeing Park Sihu, who started off as grade 5 just like himself, growing at an exponential speed, he had been engulfed by his inferiority complex and had even done things he shouldn't have done. Chasing after him, I threw my arm around his drooping shoulders. "Hello friend." Lark was startled by my sudden approach and rolled his eyes around. "Do you have some time?" No. I'm going to the dormitory. Your specialty is memorize, right? Action." He became cautious of me in a fluster. There was nothing to gain for me by instigating his wariness. I heard Professor Ronan talking to himself. "That spell book, I heard you stored a lot of spells inside." I felt his vigilance drop by a little, but he soon became dejected. Memorize was a specialty that was quite commonly seen across the magic department. It was an auxiliary system that saved the diagrams of a spell to skip past the complicated procedures and allow a fast enchantment of spells. Easier put, it was a cheat sheet. It was a specialty you could buy in the game at a grade 3 store. Lark had saved all sorts of spells into his spell book. That was something I knew because I saw the densely written list of spells in his spell book in Park Sihu's trophy storehouse. He was a hard worker, an intellectual nerd. Looks like you couldn't properly use it in the grading test. But saving all sorts of spells and using them was a whole different issue. As a substandard mage with a low mana rank, it was hard to make something amazing happen no matter how proficient you were in theory. "What do you want?" It looked like Lark also knew that himself, and he furiously growled in response, but he was just a puppy in front of a beast. I whispered into his ears in a soft voice so that no one else could hear it. "Buddy, shall we have a meal together? And talk about a grimoire while we are at it?" The word grimoire made him widen his eyes in shock. "This young will feed you something good. But in return, please let a spirit possess you for me. And let's help a unique grade demonic spirit go to heaven while we are at it." There was a student-only cafeteria in Merkarva Academy. Normal student cafeterias were for student welfare, so they usually had okay taste and the same menus, with the only good side being their cheap prices, but the one in this academy was on a whole new level. First off, the ingredients were great. I had no idea where they were coming from, but every ingredient, including the potatoes, corn, rice, flour and meat, were all of exceptional standard. In the past iteration, the quality of the ingredients did have a sudden drop as if they changed to a different supplier in the middle, but the academy used great ingredients in general. What I liked the most were the types of cuisine of this world. This is it. Tonkatsu is the best. Although I wasn't sure why there was tonkatsu, one Japanese pork cutlet in a fantasy game world, there was even kimchi, which was apparently from the eastern continent, so tonkatsu wasn't anything new. And, you know, the isekai novels of the country on the other side of the ocean had katana and kimono popping up every time, and this must be something similar to that. Why aren't you eating? Do you not like it? I was munching through the crunchy crust and the thick piece of meat, but young man Lark had a confused look on his face and did not even bother lifting the fork. Can we first talk about the grimoire? Sure. What if someone hears it? Keep your voice down. Sorry. Lark timidly shrunk back. I waited for him to pick up the tonkatsu with his fork before opening my mouth. This is something I heard from my uncle who used to be a student here. Crunch. He meekly bit on the outer crust. It was evident that he was very nervous. He used to come to this Merkarva Academy. And you know the library, right? Library 1? Nod. Apparently there's a hidden place there which has a grimoire inside. Gee, grimoire. Is that the same one as what I'm thinking of? Grimoire, easier put, it was a skill book, a phenomenal and rare artifact that allowed one to learn spells or specialties just by reading a book. It was something like an excuse to allow the player to learn all sorts of skills and enchantments of different nature. Anyone could gain abilities by reading a grimoire, but it would lose its effect in return, which was why it was exchanged at an expensive price. Even a house was nothing in comparison. See, can we get it? Where is it? If I can read that. It was natural for Lark to go crazy for it, because he was unable to use spells despite having saved the enchantments until now. This was linked to the intuition of a mage. Even if they knew about the theory behind a spell, they still had to feel and understand it. Imagining a spell and weaving it into an actual form with mana was pretty much in the realm of instincts. However, a grimoire had the power to force that intuition and comprehension. Even a normal citizen without mana could instinctively remember the enchantment as well as its principles upon reading a grimoire, even though they won't be able to manifest it due to having no mana. Yes. I know the secret room of the library and where the grimoire is. NW, why are you telling me this? Oh, he was finally rational enough to throw a normal question. Right, it was obvious that I had to explain the reason behind such a story that was too good to be true. Do you know I'm a knight? Yeah, you look like one. There are 2 grimoires according to what Uncle told me. One is about an enchantment and the other has a specialty. Really? Yeah, but my mana rank is low and it would be useless for me even if I learned an enchantment. In other words, one of them is worthless for me. See, can't you still sell it though? How? How can a normal student like me contact places like the black market? What if they ask me how I got it? They might just steal it from me if I can't answer them properly. Walking in the backstreets with a piece of jewelry that is too much to handle would obviously lead to death and robbery. More importantly, I definitely needed the help of another one to send the unique grade demonic spirit stuck next to the grimoire all the way to heaven. 1 book for you, 1 book for me. I think this sounds like a fair deal. I don't understand. What do you want from me? As expected of a hard worker who was good at theory, he was fairly quick-witted. I have 2 conditions. 1 is for you to be possessed by a demonic spirit for me. That's what we need to do in order to eliminate it. B, but anyone can. I cut him off and told him about the second condition. Secondly, I want a contract of pledge. Then you need a mage then. Exactly. Contract of pledge was a vicious short-term contract which only mages could do, that immediately made them lose all their mana upon not keeping the contract. But there are other students and professors of the magic department. Why me? Striking a deal with a professor is a stupid thing to do. Both their power and authority are in a whole different league. What if they knock me down and force me to tell them the location? Then what about other students? It's highly likely that they haven't learned the contract spell yet. Even though the contracting spell was not hard, there was no reason for students to learn such a vicious spell, so it was hard to find anyone who learned it. But it's different for someone like you who has memorize. Because we can learn the contracting spell with memorize and use it immediately, right? That is correct. That was the advantage of memorize. After saving a spell in the spell book through memorize, it was possible to use it immediately. It might be difficult for high-tier spells, but an easy one like the contracting spell would not take much time to understand. First off, we have to start with the contracting spell, but that's okay. I've saved it already a long time ago. I used to work part-time as a contractor. Ho! That will make this nice and easy then. Tell me the conditions of the contract. Let's not make this hard for the two of us and go simple. Lark and I headed to the library located at the center of the campus. The library of Mercarva Academy was as big as the scale of this massive academy. Rather than a library, it was constructed in a fancy way that reminded people of the ancient temples. In fact, it was also sometimes used as a temple. As for the size of the building, it was probably as big as 4 high schools of Korea combined into one. It's massive. Lark was overwhelmed by the sheer size of the great library and gulped. How many books even are there? I heard there's around 8 million including the ones in the basement. 8 million. It was so much bigger than what he thought that Lark couldn't even continue his sentence. Why did they build such a large library in the middle of the campus? No one can enter the academy apart from students and professors, right? Lark asked. There's probably about 3 reasons. 3 reasons? The first is the provided reason for building the Mercarva Great Library. It is to preserve knowledge and convey it to the future descendants. That one's a bit too obvious. Secondly, it's because that is more beneficial for the academy. It's probably to keep the professors stuck in the academy, right? Because this would be the best environment to gather data for research. Teaching students was less than half of the entire job of a professor. Their real jobs were related to research and thesis, and because of that, Mercarva Academy was the most attractive environment for those professors. And what's the third reason? Concealment. Concealment? It's to hide the grimoires, banned and sealed books using the overwhelming number of books. Hide a tree in the forest. It was a simple and standard rule, which was also why it was difficult to fight against. How could anyone find the book you want out of 8 million books? Normal people wouldn't be able to, but that was a different story for me. I even knew the secrets that the grade 1 librarians didn't know of thanks to my prior knowledge through the game and the previous iteration. I walked into Library 1 along with Lark. Welcome. Which book are you after? One of the librarians at the front entrance welcomed us. We are looking for books related to the specialties of Mercarva Academy. Those, what were they called again? Michelin stars or something? If you're talking about that book, then let's see. The librarian senior browsed through the list on the parchment which was created from a documenting spell and found what I talked about. If you head to 3rd floor, L32, you will see it in the 2nd row. The ladders are located next to each of the stairs, so feel free to use them. Following the words of the librarian, we climbed up the stairs of the wide Mercarva Great Library. I recalled how I used to come to this place quite often to gather bits of information with Park Siho, who was also from the magic department like Lark. This was also where I had read stuff about rune magic. As we soon entered a place that had no signs of other people, I whispered to Lark, who was walking behind me. This way. I will be giving a grimoire to Lark, and Lark was unable to mention this deal to anyone. It was a simple contract. After arriving at the secret room, I told Lark to stay still and rummage through the bookshelves. Time to fulfill my duty. I had plenty of information. Although this side quest had requirements that you couldn't meet without leveling up a lot, I should be able to beat the quest right now. Opening the secret room was something that was impossible without gaining clues from the previous quests of the quest line, and was something that required a relatively hardcore password. The code itself used quite an old-fashioned method. It was to place the books in the designated areas while pulling some of them out. It worked with a few clicks in the game, but it used to be quite difficult to clear this in the previous iteration. Rattle. Even though I didn't even touch the bookshelves, they slid open and revealed the door to the secret room. Let's go in. Huh? Oh, okay. Lark and I quickly dashed into the room before anyone could see us. It's cold in here. The inside was empty and barren with not a single breeze, and unlike Lark, I did not feel cold in the slightest. That in turn meant that the chill Lark was feeling was because of the demonic spirit in this place. Lark. It's time for you to fulfill your promise. Huh? It's about defeating that demonic spirit, right? How kook. Slam. I threw a wonderful fist towards his jaws. His eyes rolled around in circles as he soon collapsed on the ground. After making him faint, I dragged him deeper into the secret room. As I had seen in the previous iteration, this secret room had a bookshelf with 2 books inside, and those books were the rewards of this side quest. In truth, you needed a well-trained party member and a sufficiently high level to complete this quest. Otherwise, it would be impossible to even hold off against the initial attacks of the unique grade demonic spirit sealed in this place. Even though it had been over 2 minutes since we came into this secret room, Lark and I did not suffer from any attacks. Astral bodies could only interrupt upon mutual cognition. Lark was unconscious, so his cognitive ability was naturally at 0, and I couldn't perceive astral bodies because of the restriction of my precept. In other words, all I had to do now was have a one-sided conversation. Violence is no good. The demonic spirit must have paused its action. I think. I mean, what else can he even do? Like how I couldn't touch astral bodies likewise couldn't touch me. As someone who can't perceive the spirit itself due to my precept, I was pretty much invincible against astral bodies. Energy drain, soul crusher and overflowing honey of nightmare, was it? Those were the skills which would be poured out by the unique grade demonic spirit sealed in the secret room in Phase 1. One party member would immediately be stun-locked unless their magic resistance was above a certain level all the way till the end of a fight. And in Phase 2, the demonic spirit possesses one of the party members. It would possess a party member that is not stun-locked and in turn remove 2 people from the fight in an instant. It was well known for being ridiculously difficult. In the first place, it wasn't made to be cleared. The true quest begins after being neutralized once, and it is an episode that truly shows how absurdly powerful unique grades are. However, I was not getting attacked by anything even though I was in the same place as a demonic spirit. The spirit was probably in a fluster, not knowing why its attacks weren't going through. Action. Sabancia Duke. I couldn't hear the response, but I could imagine it flinching after hearing my words, wondering how I knew his name. But this was only the beginning. 800 years ago, you were the Grand General lording over the southern continent, the hero of the Old Kingdom. Even though you are a historical and renowned figure, there is a backstory that most are not aware of. I recited the personal history of the demonic spirit which I got to know from the quest. Would he be angry? I honestly wasn't sure. In the game, the dialogue wasn't that long and I was the one possessed in the previous iteration. Because of that, I didn't know about the details and all I knew was what I heard from Park Sihu and the other party members while advancing through the quest line. Your story is still quite famous in the south. There is even a book called The Truth of Castle Zaper. You were an awakened vampire. In this world, there were things called demonic molecules, which caused a normal person to morph into a demi-human. They would change the elements of the body, turning into a beast on a full moon, growing horns, or being attracted to blood. Even though they could somewhat control themselves, their violent instincts, brutality and their inhuman appearances had made them long-time victims of ostracization as humans that weren't fully humans. You awakened as a vampire. Then, you felt the unstoppable urge to suck blood and your servant became your first victim. You knew it yourself that no one would be able to stop you if you left your castle. After the first victim, Sabancia sucked the blood of dogs and pigs to control his urge, sent everyone apart from his wife and his daughter out of the castle and locked himself in his room to avoid any temptation. You tried everything but couldn't find a way to control your urge to suck blood. In the end, your frightened wife and your daughter also became potential prey. He was frightened of himself turning more and more impulsive. He was scared he might devour his own family. You made your family run away and closed Castle Zaper, and sealed yourself with your magic into that book over there. That was the identity of the grimoires of the secret room. To be exact, it was just the one that I was aiming for. It was about time for him to take the bait. Even though I couldn't perceive his presence, I could still feel him carefully listening to my words. Even though the unique grade demonic spirit of this place always attacked first, his nature in the system was still that of good, and he spared our lives even in the previous iteration when we lost in a fight against him. The original start of this quest was by getting neutralized and listening to his story. Ruina Duke, Cecilia Duke. How do you know those names, was probably the question he was dying to ask, and it was most likely as surprising as hearing his own name. How about we have a little chat now? I can't see astral bodies, you see. After saying that, I walked up to the unconscious Lark and gave him a slap. Just enough to wake him up. Ugh! His sleepy eyes suddenly widened into circles and he changed in just a few seconds. Brat. Sabancia Duke. The one inside Lark was Sabancia Duke, the unique grade demonic spirit sealed inside the grimoire. How? That's not the important part. You're curious, aren't you? About what happened to the two of them. His wife, Ruina Duke, and daughter, Cecilia Duke. The side quest that was supposed to be given by the unique grade demonic spirit of the library was to gather information about the two people. Thanks to that, I had to go to the south for a business trip which was quite the hard work. Can you tell me? I couldn't tell him fabricated stories because this vampire of the ancient times had the power to detect lies. No matter how skilled a player was at conversational skills, it was impossible to deceive the demonic spirit, Sabancia Duke. Ruina Duke escaped with Cecilia Duke, but the world was too harsh for the sheltered noble lady. This was something we discovered ourselves in the South from the diary left behind by his daughter, Cecilia Duke. Rowena Duke was scammed. She worked desperately to pay the debt for the sake of her daughter, but she couldn't live for long and died from overwork. Sabancia's expression conveyed through Lark's face crumpled in grief. Although he had given a large sum of jewelry to his wife and his daughter, they didn't have enough power to protect their belongings. What happened to my daughter, Cecil? Fortunately, it's a happy ending for her. Her childhood was arduous, but later she managed to become a mage and the greatest adventurer of the time. Can I take your word for it? I read her diary. Besides, you can tell whether I'm lying or not, can't you? Who in the world are you? How do you know me and my abilities? I just have a bit more experience than others. I couldn't tell him that it was from a game plot, so I glossed over it. What do you want? Do you want that book? Sabancia asked while pointing at the red grimoire out of the two books, which was sealing his soul. I'll definitely be taking those, but I want your residues. My residues? There are some dangerous fights ahead of me, so I need your soul dust to create a spear for myself. So it'd be great if you can go to heaven just like this. Soul dust was the powder left behind with the disappearance of a demonic spirit. This dust was a good ingredient for making weapons and gears, and the drops from strong demonic spirits were naturally more valuable. The highest level of soul dust was a must when creating an item that was beyond the legendary level. So you also knew about my grievance, huh? The final goal of this quest was to satisfy the powerful vampire, Sabancia Duke, and let him disappear in peace. However, there was one more condition that had to be fulfilled aside from relieving his grievance. But you are way too weak. Your body, aura and mana, there is nothing good about you. Someone as weak as you won't be able to handle this power. Oh damn. Please stop hurling facts at me, it hurts. Was this happening because of the level requirements of the quest? This was something I didn't know about because Park Siho was the one accepting the quest last time. I will become stronger. Anyone can make claims with their tongues. As people say, a picture paints 1,000 words. I took off my shirt and revealed the precept engraved on my body. You can read this, right? Pretty sure it used to be a common language 800 years ago. Rune was a type of magic that fell behind in efficiency over time in the rapidly advancing world of magic. But things weren't as systematic 800 years ago, so it should have been quite common back in the days. Sabancia read the rune letters carved on my body before staring into my eyes with a serious look on his face. A precept. The power that was widely used by the great warriors of the Shadow Paradise, huh? To think you would engrave such ridiculous sentences into your body. You. Seriously, what in the world are you? Can you trust me now? What an unsuitably enormous ambition for an ordinary man. Is the world going to be in danger soon? Definitely. That means you will definitely become stronger then. This is that type of contract, one that lets you receive support from the world itself as long as it is related to the destiny of this world. Can you handle it? Everyone will die if I can't. There is no other choice but to go all in. Sabancia appeared content with my response and smiled before pointing at the grimoire. Read it. That will be a small help to your ambition. I unhesitatingly walked forward and read the grimoire sealing Sabancia. After touching the untitled cover made of luxurious leather, I turned the page. This wasn't my first time reading a grimoire, because Park Sihu used to give me a few books after completing quests. The elegant letters which were most likely written by Sabancia quickly pulled my mind into it. The abilities of this world commonly classified into the categories of specialty and magic are further divided into innate and postnatal. The readability of the book was quite good. Some grimoires were hard to read because of their terrible handwriting and legibility, but it seemed that Sabancia had been a good writer back in his days. I saw a warrior taking his last breath. He was barely standing in the midst of a bloody battlefield thanks to his intestines tied around a rock. I asked him, "O warrior, shall I end it for you?" He replied, "It would be much appreciated if you give me water to satiate my throat." Respecting the tenacious warrior, I went to the nearby lake and scooped up water with my 2 hands to relieve his thirst. That was when something miraculous began to happen. Why the heck was this so gory? What? Standing with his intestines tied on a rock? He's even more upright than a right-angle triangle. As such, I have written down an imitation of his secret move. A change occurred to my body after reading the entire book. I could feel my organs shifting and it felt very odd. Done. The specialty earned by reading this grimoire was the regeneration of the tenacious warrior. Like how that warrior did not lose his fighting spirit, as long as you maintain your honorable spirit, your body will regenerate in the end. Don't give an ambiguous explanation, and please make it clear. Do you mean I won't regenerate if I faint? As long as your vitality is there, the regeneration will be maintained. Your vitality will also be greater than others. Oh. It was Park Sihu who acquired regeneration of the Tenacious Warrior in the last iteration, but he had never suffered from a severe injury, so this was my first time learning about its effect firsthand. I got the permission of Sabancia, so I should be able to make use of this ability quite well. Hugh, thanks for that. Are you not going to read that? I didn't write it myself, but I'm sure there won't be any downside to reading it. Sabancia said while pointing at the other grimoire. That grimoire would have the enchantment of a spirit-type skill called something like Soul Warriors. It was what Park Sihu used quite often to create tankers. I have no talent in magic. Plus, it was a spirit-type skill, so I wouldn't even be able to sense my own minions. I had already given up on the path of magic in this life. I was not good at magic formulae calculations, and also had no talent in understanding magic. It was a different story for things like rune magic where letters themselves acted like spells, but I couldn't use normal magic in the slightest. Back when I asked Park Sihu about it, he said you had to be good at mathematics to use magic. The last time I studied for maths was when I was a high school freshman, and people called me the CD case, because out of A, B, C and D, there were only CS and DS in my report. I'm sure grimoires are still expensive though. Selling it should be quite helpful. That's for my friend who you are possessing right now. I promised to give it to him. Is it because of the contract of pledge cast on this brat? Yes. As expected of someone who used to be called a hero in the past, he noticed the contracting spell binding Lark and me. Right. Sir Sabancia. There is something to ask you. What is it? A vampire's urge to suck blood, is that thing controllable? For example, sticking to the blood of animals and stuff. No. It is impossible. That impulse. Although I do not even want to think back to it, I felt like I would become a different person. It truly was eccentric. I see. A vampire sucking blood is not simply to satiate their hunger through blood. That in itself is related to magic, because the powers of blood and the familiar of blood are both awakened by sucking in the fresh blood of a human. Sabancia paused and pondered to himself before raising a possibility. If there is someone who can pull it off, then that person must be one with extraordinary talents. I see. And a few more things. After asking a few more questions to Sabancia Duke, we finished our questioning session. I thought it was done, but that was when Sabancia also threw me a question. Is my castle still there in the south? HNN? It is. If you happen to go there, have a look at my office. It might still be there. Huh? Is there something there? We didn't find anything in the previous iteration though? That is for you to see, Rune Mage. I wish you harbor the same caliber of courage as that warrior. I don't want to support my body with intestines though. There will be nothing you can't do with that level of courage. Well, it looks like you already have it though. That's an overstatement. It is a rightful evaluation. As an ordinary man who is neither the hero nor the sage, pledging to save the world is not easy. There was no other choice. The world was going to be destroyed without me, so what else could I do? No. There was always the option of running away, but you did not choose to escape. You have my respect. And lastly, thank you for telling me news about my wife and my daughter. With that, Lark's body began to collapse to the ground. He was falling face first and looked like his nose would be crushed at this rate, so I supported his body, as golden powders piled up neatly on the floor of the secret room. It was an epic rank soul dust, which one might even mistake for gold dust. After laying Lark down on the ground, I collected the dust and placed it into a cloth purse. It might seem difficult to gather because it was powder, but soul dust of the same attribute gravitated to each other, so all I had to do was pick up a few and have the rest follow in one piece. An exceptional ingredient which could only be gained at around level 50 was already in my hands. Ah, did you wake up? My head hurts. You were possessed by a demonic spirit until just then. Why does my jaw hurt as well though? Who knows? I quickly handed the grimoire over to Lark, who was touching his swollen jaw. Is this the grimoire? Yeah. Hurry up and read it. We have to leave soon. Lark received the grimoire with shivering hands. Can I really read it? What do you mean? That was the contract. That's true, but wasn't the contract too favorable for me in the first place? That appeared to be the question in his mind. It's okay for things to be sometimes given to those who don't try. After a while, we walked out of the secret room. Lark seemed touched by the fact that he had obtained a medium-ranked spell despite not doing much himself. Thank you. I won't forget what happened today. Thank you so much. Seriously. Alright. It wasn't my fault that he had a miserable end in the previous iteration, yet I still felt a strange sense of guilt dissolving away. I fed him the first spoon, and after that it was up to him. I could only hope that the boy wouldn't fall into despair and that he wouldn't hate himself in this life. Buzz. Aha. It was then. The sentences of precept engraved on my body turned blazing hot. Ugh. It felt as if I was being scorched with fire. That's a success. It seemed that the duty of the precept, the one that I wouldn't disregard the misfortune of the good, had been successfully fulfilled. I looked at the system message which I hadn't seen for a while. Duty fulfilled, Sabancia Duke. Difficulty, B. Reward, even distribution of 80 points. Something did pop up, but what was even distribution of 80 points supposed to even mean? Can't you be a bit more nice? Status window. Access denied due to insufficient qualification. Geez, for fuck's sake. Phew. Although I wasn't sure because of my practically useless system window, those points were probably talking about the status points of a character. A player's status in Heroic Legends of Arhen were divided into strength, agility, aura, mana and dexterity. The common rule of thumb was to go 3, 1, 1 depending on the skill tree you were after. Can I not even pick the stats I want? It was a shame because using all the 5 stat points given per level up into the necessary stats were the most efficient way to grow a character. Hold up. 5 points? Wait, I got 80 points. 80 stat points was something you could only get through 16 level ups in the game. I didn't get any level up announcement, so that meant the reward of the quest itself was 80 stats. Even though Sabancia Duke's quest had a difficulty rank of B, it wasn't a quest that gave an enormous amount of experience points that equaled 16 level ups. Gulp. Although there was the penalty of everything being an equal distribution, maybe there was no cap for my stats then? Was this a synergy created from the system and the effects of the precept? As a reward for doing something good, I got an epic rank soul dust, a specialty, and a tremendous increase in stats. Hoho. Jackpo. Hook. W. What was I trying to say just then? I almost copied the habit of that disgusting dude. How horrendous. I'm different from that psychopath. It felt terrible, so I decided to avoid copying his habit at all cost. It was another normal day. There are demonic races in our world that go under the names of demonic beasts, demonic spirits, and demi-humans. They suffer persecution. The courses at Merkarva Academy had units of credit. Excluding the mandatory courses, it was fairly relaxed. Now, lastly, is there anyone who can tell me about the incident that served as the turning point of demi-human persecution? Is the lesson over? During a boring history lesson, Jaeger opened his eyes and wiped off the drool on his face. You could have saved your own life if you slept for 5 more minutes. Huh? Oh dear. It seems that my lesson has been very boring for you, Mr. Jaeger. Jaeger turned his head like an old, creaking robot. At the end of his gaze was the professor of historical studies, Ronalik, giving the brightest smile in the world. Yujek. Sorry. Jaeger Hinspeter. Come early for next week's lesson and clean the room for everyone. Yes sir. Saying that, Jaeger lowered his head while grumbling about having to do something so tedious. I opened my mouth. Don't worry. I will. Corinne, you. Don't tell me. I will be your supervisor. Go to hell. After the lesson, Jaeger said while closing his blank and empty book. Oi. Let's have lunch. What are you having? The kimchi udon I had yesterday was alright. Is there, like, something else that's nice and spicy? Nice and spicy? I know the best place for that. Challenge accepted. You have a painful death ahead of you. Oi, nerd. What are you up to now? NN? I'm going to go to the library and study. Let's have some lunch first. Wait. There was a scorching chicken feet restaurant in the central streets of the academy that dropped your HP by 20% or something, wasn't there? Gweekik. I'm dying. Water. It's more spicy if you drink water. Drink milk. Ugh. I think there's a hole in my stomach. I should have had a kimchi udon. Do you see this, Sir Kimgu? This is the power of culture that you wanted the most. As soon as the afternoon classes ended, I headed to the training room. It had been 4 days since my last visit. The past 3 to 4 days had been an introduction to the basic curriculum and an extension of the orientation. It's already Friday. Let's apply for a leave on the way to the dormitory today, and go outside tomorrow. Training clothes, training spear and an elemental body please. In order to test the increase of my stats from the precept, I went to the front desk, received a elemental body and woke it up. Viewing. Oh. He's doing it again. Is he not tired of it yet? He is tenacious, but that's just being stubborn. The sound of the elemental body fluttering its wings gathered the eyes of the senior students once again. Those blokes were all quite diligent as well. People that used their free times to train were those with a promising future. I raised my spear against the elemental body without paying them any attention when a second-year student from the night department called me. Oi, freshman. Yes? I saw you swinging your spear around to catch that elemental body. How about you just do something else? I didn't say anything in response, as the second-year student from the night department continued with a condescending look on his face. You're just a grade 5. I see. So this is that thing. People used to pick a fight with Park Si-hoo quite a lot, because he started off as a grade 5. Was I pulling the aggro now that Park Si-hoo wasn't here? Yes, well, I'm just trying to push myself. No, it's never gonna work, alright? Don't waste your time and just quietly practice by yourself with your spear. Like, what was wrong with this guy? He seemed to be the type of person to go to a funeral and complain about the menu. It was dumbfounding, but I wasn't having any murderous intent or anything which was natural as a human, because whimsically killing people like Park Si-hoo was something animals would do. Do you think you're something great because Marie is looking after you? What? Why was he talking about her all of a sudden? You must be excited because of her small bit of attention, but... What? I.e. What are you doing all of a sudden? He gave an irritated shout as I whispered in a soft voice which only he could hear. Do you like Senior Marie? Ads by Pub Future. His face flushed in the blink of an eye, and it was super clear at this point. Kaya, those are the good times. That's youth for ya. Let's see, how was mine? Boys middle school, boys high school, physical education college, military. What? Where did my youth go? And in the previous iteration, I had no time to meet anyone due to following Park Si-hoo around the whole time. Park Si-hoo was also deliberately stopping me as well. I see. So the reason there were no cherry blossoms in my life is all because of Park, right? It's because of that stupid Park, right? That had to be the case. And, no? It's clearly not a no. No. So do you like Senior Marie? I don't. Do you hate Senior Marie? Yes. I hate. Kane, you idiot. Another female student in her second year said while poking him with her elbow. Kane turned around from that and found someone staring at him. It was Marie. Damn, where is my popcorn? You, Marie? I see. Kane hates me, huh? And, no. That's not. It's fine. It's normal for people to hate some people, right? Guys, do you want some potatoes? I want some. Me too. Kane, you retard. Marie had steamed potatoes again as always, and she generously gave them away to everyone around her except for Kane. Junior, do you want some steamed potatoes? I have sugar. Of course. I will gratefully accept those potatoes as someone who likes Senior Marie. Right? And it will be bad manners to give it to someone who hates me, right? Judging from her manner of speech, it seemed that she was somewhat aware of his feelings as well. Kane, the innocent boy, was the only one with a teary look on his face. Are you going to train with an elemental body again? Yes. I'm sure you will be able to pull it off. She had a very amiable smile on her face, unlike the time when she was consoling me to aim for the next chance. Marie, I know you're bad at saying harsh things, but this isn't right. He's a freshman. And he's a grade 5. I had no idea why there was such a big crowd in front of a freshman student that was just trying to do his best, as well as why they were each saying something bad. Seemingly encouraged by the crowd behind him, the boy, Kane, also chimed in. Yes. It took me a week as well. It's not something a grade 5 freshman can do. Really? Marie walked up to me and whispered into my ears with a ticklish voice. Junior, do you want to earn some money together? Why was she trusting me this much? Did she see me succeed or something? 7:3? You mean 3:7 and 7 for me. I have the money though? Then 4:6. Let's do 5:5. Deal. Nod. After getting my consent, she asked Kane with a confident look on her face. Shall we have a bet then? I'll bet 2 gold coins on Junior's success. 2 gold coins was a large sum of money which was enough to buy 400 noodles in the city, and was roughly about $2,000. Was she loaded because she was a grade 1 mage? Marie, you don't need to go that far just to encourage a junior. All the senior students gave similar responses in general, believing that Marie was doing this due to being considerate of me. However, she didn't cower in the slightest and instead. Why? Are you scared? She used an AoE taunt skill. I'm betting 70 silver coins that the freshman will fail. 1 gold coin from me. 30 silver coins. Do you take items? It turned into a gambling den in an instant. Good luck, Junior. My 2 gold coins are on you. We had 7.4 odds for my success. Excluding the small group of students who stood on my side and went with the high odds to aim for a huge turnaround, most students bet that I wouldn't be able to defeat the elemental body. 7 gold coins if I win, My entire fortune right now was 40 silver coins, and the amount of support fund a grade 5 knight gets is 1 gold coin a month. Even though there was a lot of leeway thanks to little fees for accommodation and meals, it was always better to have more money. Time to get to work. I tapped the elemental body and made it open its wings. Like last time, it began to float into the air. Even though defeating it shouldn't be a problem, what was important was the time taken, because this bet only lasted 30 minutes. Considering the status points I gained by sending Sabania Duke away in peace, I should be able to pull off the basic moves of my spearmanship. Phew. Settling my breath, I grabbed onto my spear. I pulled the aura through the Dantian and made it explode in one breath. 6 ways of the spear. First style, ominous snake. The spearhead slithered like a snake as it deceived the elemental body and pierced through in the blink of an eye. Ads by Pub Future. It was one of the basic moves that dazzled the enemy with a flashy set of moves before continuing into a fierce stab. All I had to do was apply a little bit of feint and connect this to Tiger's Gust or a Spinning Heaven. Quagic. Ah! The bisected elemental body rolled on the ground. This was definitely outside my expectations. Everyone was speechless in front of the unexpected turn of events, and even Marie seemed stunned. Ah! What happened just then? And naturally, others were even more flabbergasted. Hell yeah, the high odds. That's how you do it. Wait. Hold on. There has to be something wrong. Of course. And that's why we gamble. Why would you gamble if you're going to go safe the whole time? Quack. The small group of students that bet on the high odds mocked the students who went for the safe bet, and the training room turned into a pandemonium. TCH. That's why you shouldn't gamble. As they were slowly coming back to themselves, Marie walked up and handed me 8 gold coins. This is for you, Junior. Isn't this more than 5:5? I rounded it up. Rounding up 60 silver coins. As expected, it seemed that money was not a problem for a grade 1 mage like herself. You did it in one go. Honestly, I was quite surprised. Well, it's not that hard once you get used to it. HNN. But last time you stabbed 3 times to create ripples around it, didn't you? So she did see it. She must have come back to pick up something, but there was something even more stunning. How did you even see that? HNN? She saw through the secrets of Ominous Snake? Wasn't she a mage? What kind of ridiculous dynamic vision did she have? After the ruckus, I tested a few more skills at the training room. In the previous iteration, I used to train while pushing myself to the brink of death. It was unavoidable because as an ungifted student like Corinne Lork, I had no choice but to master tricks to survive through a story filled with unique grades. The reason I was able to beat those numerous grade 1s and unique grade enemies was all thanks to the technique that I polished with my life on the line. By learning the 8 trigram 1A Chinese religious motif incorporating the 8 trigrams of the I Ching, arranged octagonally around a symbol denoting the balance of yin and yang, or around a mirror of fists, swords, spears and staffs, I learned the 8 trigram martial arts and spearmanship by myself. That foundation alone, however, was not enough to solve all the problems, and the spearmanship that I thus learned from my master was the 6 ways of the spear and the final move of the 6th style, Void. Quaduk. The dummy half crumbled as I ended up dropping my spear. My palms ached as sweat drenched my body. Phew. I can barely pull off the 5th style for now, huh? The foundations were there, but the 6th style was still too much. From the 1st style of the Ominous Snake to the 5th style of the Crumbling Mountain were the basic ways of a spear, but the 6th style was one that would kill me if I didn't have a strong enough body to support the attack. In the previous iteration, I was only barely able to pull it off by consuming a capsule of energy, which I got after boiling the white silver seed of the lake, immediately before attacking. But even so, the risk was still quite high. My body needs to be at the level of a grade 1 knight to do this without any risk. 6th style of the spear was still impossible, but this was well within my expectations and the disappointment was thus very small. The real problem was with rune magic. Hagalaz more mana required. My mana depleted rapidly like that of a premature ejaculator and I couldn't even use rune magic for long. Thanks to the fulfillment of the precept and the increase of my stat points, it did go up from 3 a day to about 10 a day, but rune magic didn't have a good efficiency in the first place and I couldn't do much with my current mana. It is definitely a merit that I can use it immediately without any enchantments, but there was a reason why it was now a dead language which was only used as support skills by a small number of people. Most of those bastards also used it as support. An exception would be the primal rune, the very first rune letter and the most primal one that was used in the era of gods. It would only appear towards the end of the final boss of the second arcade, when the King of Iron Mountain breaks out of its seal at the academy. The enemy would appear during the absence of the chairman, Ariu, who gets busy after the incident with Marie, and during then, we would have to defeat the King of Iron Mountain, get the primal rune and deal with the traitor as well. Primal rune was not a very efficient way to use magic either, and in the end, my chronically horrible amount of mana will be the problem once again. I have to focus on increasing my stats for the time being. Regardless of all the techniques and skills under my belt, I still had to have a strong enough body. The ordeals I had to go through because of that in the previous iteration were countless. Of course, there was a method. There were the hidden pieces I would be obtaining from now on as well as the quests that were related to the precept. I should be able to clear 4-5 of them this weekend alone. On the way out of the training room to dinner, I came across an unexpected person. There was a girl with bob hair wearing nun clothes who would attract the gazes of everyone within the distance of 100 meters. The girl reading a thick hardcover book appeared like an image that came straight out of a painting. There was no way I wouldn't know about her. Despite being a freshman, she was different from other characters who could enter the party from the start. She was the truly overpowered character who was only available near the end of Heroic Legends of Arhan. Park Sihu did not seek her help in the previous iteration, but wasn't able to kill her either. She was the living Jiangshi 2A. Jiangshi, also known as a Chinese hopping vampire, is a type of reanimated corpse in Chinese legends and folklore. With an unbreakable Vajra body. Heavenly Yiksha, Huaran. The strongest tanker of Heroic Legends of Arhan. At the same time, she was the worst time bomb of Merkava Academy. Action. There were the so-called demi-humans in this world. The ones affected by the molecules of demons were referred to as demonic beasts, demonic spirits and demi-humans depending on who they originally were. An example was the demonic spirit, Sabansia Duke. He was someone who awakened as a demi-human after becoming a vampire. After that, he lost his physical body, then sealed himself and became a demonic spirit. Did that mean he was an enemy of humanity? Was he a vengeful spirit that endlessly scattered killing intent? That was the same for demi-humans. Although people might awaken as demi-humans, some still maintained their nature as a human while some lost their rationality. And the heavenly Yiksha, Huaran, was a time bomb that could go either way. Her cynical expression and gaze appeared brutal with not a hint of tenderness. The inside of her hair had turned crimson red like the symbolic color of demons, and the nun clothes covering her body were more like restraints than religious clothing. Hi, I'm Corinne Lork. We saw each other during the entrance ceremony, didn't we? She didn't say anything in response and instead silently gazed at me with the eyes of a beast. In fact, her showing some type of reaction was a positive sign, because that meant the seal was still working properly. You, NN? You merged into one. Did she see through me? A living corpse with two souls, the soul of a human and the soul of a demon. That paradoxical existence was what Huaran was as a living Jiangshi. Those in the perilous middle grounds of the boundaries of life and death had the power to see the color of souls. It wasn't strange for her to perceive the abnormality of Corinne Lork and the combination of my two souls. How does it feel to crush and swallow the original soul? Well, I wasn't expecting to get condemned like this, but to be fair, this was something only Huaran would ask. No idea. What? You probably know better than I do, but this is not something we can solve with ease. It just naturally happens over time. Naturally? What can we even do? We just have to focus on the present. I used to contemplate this topic quite a lot in the previous iteration. Were Corinne Lork and I different people? What if the memories of Corinne Lork were my actual memories? But if so, then who was the person that went through a boys' middle school, a boys' high school, a physical education college and the military on Earth? But in the end, it was all meaningless. The previous souls of both myself and Park Sihu did not appear till the very end, even until my death. However, it was a different issue for Huaran, because the true original soul was actually still inside her body. She opened her mouth with a scowl. You are not the owner of your body. You're just a thief and a robber. You have no right to claim that body. Who was she saying those words to? Even though it sounded like a vicious criticism, I knew the agony and trouble this 3-year-old child was going through. Her answer to that agony would be what decides the turning point. Back in my hometown, we had someone who turned into a green giant when he got angry. What are you talking about? He's called Mr. Bruce. Normally he is a smart person, but when he turns into an angry green giant, he breaks everything around him. They hated each other. Isn't that bad? No, that was good instead. The two of them excelled at different things. So I was disappointed when he became a smart green man later on. He was neither this nor that. Why did you have to do that, Russo brothers? Anyway, what I noticed from that person's story is that it's not important who the original one is. The two souls are different after being formed, and they each have their individual personality. This was the example I wanted her to follow. Like Mr. Bruce and the Green Boss, I think it's possible for two souls to coexist in one body. Because being born is never a sin. There are things in this world that shouldn't have been born. Leaving those words behind, Huaran flicked her head and turned away from me, which was unfortunate, because that wasn't the reaction I wanted to get from her. In the previous iteration, I didn't have many interactions with Hwoarang. It was mostly Park Sihu who talked to her. Although Hwoarang was supposed to show interest in the player, Hwoarang was mysteriously unconcerned about him. It might have been because of that, but Park Sihu desperately wanted to kill her, but he failed. It was because he had already killed Alicia Arden, Hwoarang's greatest counter. Things would get extremely easy after pulling her into the party. Her unbreakable Vajra body and her ability to use demonic aura easily placed her among the top strongest characters of heroic legends of Arhan. One thing to be concerned about was her chains and the talismans being removed and her seal being broken. At this current point in time, it was impossible to physically stop her if she were to go into that state. It was a bad call to get greedy for an uncontrollable bomb. See you later. I walked away after giving her a normal farewell, not knowing that her eyes were still fixed on my back. The next day, I left the dormitory before the birds even marked the start of a weekend with their songs. I walked towards the mission board located at the southern regions of the academy. In the early stages of Heroic Legends of Arhan, there were two things which the player had to do to progress the main storyline. The first was lessons, and the second was the mission board. A variety of missions existed on the board in the form of papers, which students of the Guardian Academy were able to undertake at any time. It ranged from small missions like those requested by citizens of the city to large ones like the official missions given by the Guardian Alliance. The player had to receive missions from here to gain EXP points and reputation to meet the level requirements of the main quest. But of course, there was no need to do these in the previous iteration because it was no longer a game. Even though it was still very early, I saw another student looking at the mission board. She was wearing a specially designed martial uniform and the blade hanging on her waist was a hidden piece that was incomparably more valuable than my mass-manufactured spear. Alicia Arden? UHT? H, hello. Nice to meet you. She greeted me with a deep bow. We're in the same year so you can be more casual. No thanks. I prefer this. Was she always such a polite character? I didn't get to see her in the previous iteration because that damned Park killed her in the blink of an eye, and my memories about the game were vague considering how it was already 3 years ago. Are you taking a mission already? It's the first weekend though. You're in grade 2 so you don't need money or merits, do you? I need money. Ing? What was this about? There is actually a non-interference principle in our household. We have to earn living expenses for ourselves at least. Don't you get support funds from the academy? Alicia Arden was someone who hit grade 2 straight away without even having to go through the grading test. Considering how the living support funds increased exponentially depending on the grades, the amount she received per month should be around the same as the amount I received per year. I don't get any funds. Why? My parents are in the top 10 percentile of wealth. The support funds were formed by the donations of nearby kingdoms and the kingdom of El Rath, which provided Merkarva Academy with the land. They were giving out living funds without even taking in any tuition fees, so they did not give any financial support to the wealthy households. It was similar to how rich people didn't get any national scholarships in Korea. If you're looking for some immediate cash, I recommend this patrol mission. All you have to do is go around the outskirts of the city. You don't have to do much, but the pay is good because of the risk, and if you come across a monster, you get an extra bonus. Wow, 20 silver coins a day. My month's worth of allowance. Alicia took off the mission paper from the board with a bright look on her face. A daughter of a rich family getting 20 silver coins a month. It seems they take up to 3 people. Would you like to join? No. I have something else to do. It was a precious weekend. I had to complete as many of the necessary missions as possible to increase my stats. I scanned across the mission board and found the one I wanted. Please find Navi? It's about finding a missing cat. The reward is 40 silver coins, but isn't it too unpredictable? It was a mission with a difficult rank of grade 5 that was about finding a missing cat. There were 40 silver coins on the line, which was higher than Alicia's, but there was no way finding a cat who had been missing for 3 days would be an easy task. It's alright. I'm very good at finding missing animals. You gave me an amazing piece of information, so I would love to help, but I'm really short of money, so you don't need to worry about it. Leaving Alicia behind, I walked past the main entrance of the academy as the security guard, Mr. Will, spoke to me. A mission already? What a diligent young man. Thank you, Mr. Will. NN? How did you know my? You have a name badge right there. I see. Good luck on your mission, student Corinne. Walking past Mr. Will, I headed to the client's house. Night, uncle. Please find Navi. Please. It's Appa. Ms. Anna? You can call me Night Appa. Night, uncle. Good luck. Hey Anna. I'm sorry, Mr. Knight, and thank you. Please have this as a snack. A sandwich. Thank you very much. Although I heard a few things about Navi from the client, Anna, including Navi's favorite streets, that was just an act of formality. I already knew where Navi was. The reason I picked this mission was because of my precept. The result of this quest leads Anna to misfortune. It was a seemingly trivial misfortune compared to the ones of the main scenario, but it would be a shocking event for a child that was depressing enough to make her cry for 3 days and 3 nights straight. This was the chance to find out how exactly my precept worked. Navi. The sewers, which were barely ever visited by the maintainers of the city, were filled with a disgusting odor and a dirty stream of water. Navi, here's some sausage for you. The side quest, Please Find Navi, was a simple mission given to rookie knights and mages. It appeared in the game as well, and was one with a fair bit of story. It is possible to find the cat, but the problem is that it will already be dead by then. According to the original story, 2 days after asking around the favorite streets of Navi, the player would finally discover that Navi had entered the sewers. Navi, hurry up and come outside. The only things you could find in the game were cat bones with everything else digested and a name badge. It was quite a horrible story. Why the hell was the quest so brutal even though the client was such a cute child? It was like a savage fairy tale. In any case, in the game, it was a quest that only left the player feeling uncomfortable due to the phrase that the dung including the bones were still warm, which meant that the cat was eaten recently, but meow, good. It seemed that the cat really did adore the smell of Vienna sausages. It was remarkable how it managed to smell this in this damn sewer. Navi, come here. Even though it was too dark to see properly, I could see the dirty furs of the cat as well as a necklace and a name badge. It was perfect. Navi, I won't hurt you. Come on. Here is your favorite sausage. I didn't know how to deal with cats, because I used to have a cat allergy back on Earth. Naya, UHT, did it sense my killing intent? Navi turned away from the sausage and dashed into the sewers. Where are you running? You damn little cat. I knew it. I quickly dashed after it. However, it was too dark to see what was a meter ahead in the sewers, and the only things I could feel were the disgusting odor of the water and a cold gust of wind. It was hard for human eyes to get used to the darkness like that of beasts, but there was a way around it. Daggers. In an instant, I etched the rune letter onto my skin. It led to a momentary improvement of vision, to be exact, it was something that slightly helped with night vision. Come here, Naya. But that was more than enough to let me catch a running cat in the sewers. You are nothing but a damn beast. I was still a superhuman even though I was at the bottom. Catching Navi was nothing difficult. Naya? Got ya. I snatched Navi into my arms. It gave a somewhat menacing growl but soon turned calm after having sausage. There will be no misfortune for little Anna now. It was an easy success, that was what I was thinking, but the cat was in a strange state. Navi was shivering, but coldness didn't seem to be the reason. Sahrkk. The water rippled. It was rather strange for it to be considered a current, and my hands quickly reacted. Quajic. Bam! I pierced the spear into the water all the way to the ground with one arm, and felt something twitch before turning loose. Raising the spear, I found a mysterious humanoid figure with a hole in the head. There was an immensely ill-tempered look on the face of the humanoid monster, and it was thin yet had a big bulge in its stomach. Water demon. It wasn't too big of a surprise because water demons tended to be found quite often in sewers. Armed guards cleaned up the sewers regularly and they were not that big of a threat. The issue is that they travel together to make up for their weakness. They were probably the ones that had eaten Navi the cat. Looking back at how things transpired when it was a game, there were also water demons in the fields near the city, so it wasn't strange for them to be here. Gweek. Jaya. Jaya. 2 more water demons crawled out of the water. They were actually quite clever in the real world. Making sound on purpose to let another one attack, huh? After getting rid of the water demon that was stuck on the spear, I thrusted the spear behind my back towards the ceiling. Pukang. Geek. There was no need to even turn around because the water demon that was crawling up the walls of the sewers for an ambush from behind had died immediately after a stab to the heart. I mastered how to fight you guys at the Rodion River already. Even though that damned park broke the dam and wiped out most of the monsters alongside the villagers, it was still true that I had fought them a lot. Jaya. I could see the water demon was trying to use its brain, but it was just a low-graded monster and it was obvious what its best plan could be. Slam, action. Kicking the water demon that was trying to crawl up, I stabbed at the head of the other one that tried to grab onto my ankle. The fallen water demon tried to stand back up, but I thrusted the spear into its mouth and stabbed it deeper into the water. Up. Funny how water demons can't even breathe underwater. Their skins turned dry unless they were in humid and wet areas, and that was the only reason they lived near sources of water. The remaining water demons struggled but soon turned silent. Nya? Navi seemed frightened after seeing how powerless the water demons were even though they were the predators in its eyes. I saved you from becoming dung, you know that. After safely sending Navi back to Miss Anna, a message soon appeared on the system window. Duty fulfilled, Anna McMillan. Difficulty, E. Reward, even distribution of 5 points. That's tiny. Night uncle. Thank you for finding Navi. Girl, it's Appa. Corinne Appa. Can you call me Corinne Appa? My mind was soon to be 30 but my body was that of a teenager, so I wasn't asking for much, was I? Corinne uncle, would you like to have a meal with us? Mom's an amazing cook. It seemed that the smile of a wretched girl who would most certainly grow up to be a beauty was about 5 points. This is not it. Mr. Yoon, who was running a small fried chicken store in Mercarva City, was spending another day enthusiastically coming up with a new menu. The store was smaller than 10 square meters. Even though most of his sales were at night, the reason why Mr. Yoon was here so early in the morning was because he had been searching for the right sauce to go with fried chicken for over 6 months. This is not it either. The sauce with over 10 ingredients including garlic, carrot and chili peppers that he brought from his hometown were astonishingly good by itself, but when he actually fried it together with deep-fried chicken, it made the crust soggy in an instant. Ugh, what's the problem? His goal was to make chicken that was delicious even when it turned cold. That became his stubborn ambition which he had been delving into for the past 6 months. Mr. Yoon changed the ratio one more time, and was just about ready to cook it again with chili powder and crushed garlic. Creak! That's not it. And then? A boy appeared after pushing the door wide open. Corn syrup. Put corn syrup in. He was like a passing scholar. Corn syrup. Put corn syrup in. Here comes the hero. Well then. And there he goes. Seeing the young man leave after telling him to put corn syrup in, it was natural for Mr. Yoon to be flabbergasted. Is he sick in the head? He wanted to ignore the words of a mental patient, but his words telling him to put corn syrup in were echoing around his ears. Should I try it? Listening to the words of the young man, he made a new sauce by adding corn syrup. The seasoning that was now thick due to the addition of corn syrup looked nice and sweet, and when he plastered it over the fried chicken. What? This flavor? The crust of the fried chicken went beautifully with the thick sauce and had a soft yet glutinous and chewy texture. The sweetness of corn syrup mixed into the spiciness of chili powder and garlic. Spicy, sweet and salty. SSS. Was this the perfect form of chicken? Who in the world is that young man? Was he like an apostle sent by the chicken god or something? Reflecting on the words left behind by the young passerby, Mr. Yoon quickly started adjusting the recipe. Duty fulfilled, Yoon Jaijo. Difficulty, E. Reward, even distribution of 5 points. Oh, this actually worked. Mr. Yoon was the owner of the fried chicken store who was the protagonist of the side quest, Finding the Origin. He would succeed in finding the correct recipe for spicy and sweet chicken by himself, but starts a lawsuit against Mr. Yang who was in the same industry as him, due to the betrayal of his staff and Mr. Yang's claim that he was the original owner of the recipe. It was a realistic yet messy story. The spicy and sweet fried chicken had been introduced 1 year earlier than the original plot, and the staff trader wasn't even hired yet. Of course there's going to be fried chicken in a Korean game. In any case with this, the holy and lofty marinated chicken will be introduced to this world. Both Park and I were people who couldn't give up on fried chicken, so this side quest was one of the ones we prioritized over everything. About 25 points from yesterday and today, huh? After completing the quest to find Navi the cat, I ran around the city and resolved a few more incidents. Those quests ranged from finding the lost ring of a widow to guiding a son who fell to the wrong path back to the correct one. They were all from citizens who the system labeled as good. That chicken quest confirms it. Neutral is also okay. The last quest I cleared about finding the origin was a form of test. In the game, Mr. Yoon's character was sitting at neutral. However, I personally considered him a nice person because he forgave the traitor and often distributed chicken for free. Was the game status an absolute indication? Or was my perception more important? My duty was activated even with the completion of the quest of Mr. Yoon, who was at a neutral status in the game. So that means my perception is more important than the system. That was actually a very good sign because around the third arcade, there would be systemically good characters who were a bit hard to consider as nice people. The fundamentalists of the old faith, they had a clear standpoint which was in complete contrast to the priests of the new faith who had put on the talismans and the seals on Hwoarang. Those damn fundamentalists. You can't speak logic to them, but they're technically not bad people. Fortunately, completing this mission proved that I did not have to prioritize them, and that would give me a fair amount of freedom. Is this what they call selective justice? It was great that the system was somewhat flexible. More importantly, the biggest return from this mission was that I could pretty much infinitely earn stats. Ha ha ha. There is a dope bug on my stats. Hee. There was a girl standing on top of the clock tower, a place where people weren't supposed to reach. Standing on the roof of the best place to gaze down at the whole city, the girl with red eyes looked down on the ground. Strange person. For the past 2 days, she had been observing the man called Corin Lork. He was a unique type of person just like herself, who had 2 souls existing in one body. But unlike her, those souls ended up merging into one. He was like her senior, and she thus couldn't help but feel intrigued. It was the first weekend of the semester. She was wondering where he was running off to so early in the morning, and most of them were about helping people. Finding a missing cat, taking the boy who was with a group of delinquents back home and finding a lost ring. Although he was getting a few silver coins as reward, Hwoarang now had some idea of the currency system in this continent, as well as how meaningless that small amount of money was to superhumans. Hee. Seeing him give a bright smile at the end despite getting such worthless things in return made her frown. Why was he working so hard? Was he just born as a nice person? There's no way a person like that would exist. On top of the clock tower with her sleeves fluttering in the wind, the girl closed her eyes. The image floating in her mind, which was in a striking contrast to the quiet and peaceful scenery of this city, was that of an apocalypse, a world swallowed by flames and the hideous sight of humans. It was an old memory of her original body. Oh, my. Ran? Did you come out with your dad? The housewife who was greeting with a baby in her arms. Are you shopping for your parents? Take this with you. The tofu seller who greeted her with a smile. Are you shopping for your parents? Take this with you. And even the officials who were there asking Master for help. Every one of them changed their attitudes in the blink of an eye. They cursed the girl and nonchalantly encouraged her demise. Die, you monster. Please die. We're begging you. We have shredded the limbs of your father to death. We will now subjugate you in the name of the royal palace. Goodwill was something that was as easy to flip as a piece of paper. Depending on the necessity and comfort of oneself, people easily changed their minds and killed others. That was what humans were. From the start to the end, all of them were in the gray zone. Some were jet black, but none of them were pure white. That was why she couldn't hide her confusion upon seeing Corin Lork with her astral eyes. Grade 5. The very bottom of the academy. He was probably the weakest out of everyone in this academy which she was dragged into. He was so weak that he might snap from her single grip. So, why was he so diligent at helping other people? What was it that was making that boy smile? The faint smile he showed to the child after finding the missing cat, and the bright smile on his face after helping others. The boy was dazzling. It was a naively happy smile. He wasn't forcing himself to smile, nor was he trying to deceive other people. And most importantly, like Mr. Bruce and the Green Boss, I think it's possible for 2 souls to coexist in one body. She flinched after hearing that. His words appeared to be about her. That violent green giant sounded like a representation of herself. Shut up. Stop mumbling. Was the guy called Bruce the same as the weak life inside me? No. That's not it. I'm different from them. This guy was begging for life and wanted to live forever. This is that price, I have the right to accept it. That must have been the same for Corin Lork. A stronger soul must have swallowed the weaker soul that was inside his body. Were his current actions for atonement? Was he helping other people to be self-righteous? Can't I do the same thing then? I can just get rid of this weak little girl inside me and become a knight or a guardian in her stead. Guardians are heroes that save and protect people. If I listen to lectures and become a hero, would everyone look at me in a different light? Jiang, you're here. The sound of a dimensional contortion woke her up as a blonde-haired woman walked out from a fissure in the air. Josephine Clara. She was the witch who brought her here with Chairman Ariu from the east. I've been leaving you alone because you weren't leaving the city, but please ask for permission to leave if you want to leave the campus. Seeing the silent and unresponsive Hwoarang, Josephine heaved a sigh before opening a new dimension. Hwoarang stood up without retaliating or replying to her. Because being born is never a sin. Someone like you shouldn't have been born. Who is right? Her sharp eyes looked akin to the vigilant gaze of a wounded beast. The next day, around 400 freshmen were standing at the entrance of the hunting grounds located at the north of the academy. As its name would suggest, it was a broad and extensive forest that was also sometimes referred to as the Emerald Forest. This place was often opened for the realistic fighting experiences of the students and was a place I had visited quite often myself. With the expansive woods in the background, Chairman Ariu and Senior Professor Josephine were glancing across the students. Good morning everyone. I will make it quick. Chairman Aria's voice managed to reach the entire group of 400 students without fail. Today's lesson is very simple. It will be a real-life practice and experience for everyone. Action. It was still early in the morning, so there were a few students that were dozing off. Normally, the words of the chairman were meant to be heard in a sleepy state, but this was the Merkava Academy. Chairman Aria suddenly stopped his words as Lady Josephine struck the whip in the air. Slap. I had no idea why it made such a loud slapping noise even though she was swinging it in the air, but in any case, one of the students suddenly rose to the air. Wah. Student Jaeger Hinspeter. Sleeping during the lesson. -1 point. She soon retrieved her gaze that seemed like a ray of laser beaming through her monocle, and Jaeger fell back on the ground as Chairman Ariu continued his words. Today, your survival skills will each be evaluated at the hunting grounds. Your job is to head to the northern end of the forest. Do we just have to head to the end of the forest? Yes. If you arrive at the shed located at the north, you will pass the test. But it won't be easy. Senior Professor? In response to Chairman Aria's summon, Lady Josephine struck the air with her whip as a large basket dropped in front of the students. The basket was divided into 4, with different colored armbands inside them. Please wear the armband that corresponds to your grade. The students walked up and wore their respective armbands. Blue for grade 2, huh? That looks fancy as well. And it's also eye-catching. It was definitely eye-catching considering how there were only 4 grade 2 students. Alicia seemed clueless about how dangerous that would be for her and was grinning to herself after seeing the pretty piece of cloth. Huaran is probably not going to participate. There was one girl who stood out the most among the students, who was quietly holding her breath like a beast. As the one and only grade 1 knight among the freshmen, there wasn't even any armband for her, and even in the previous iteration, Huaran had shown an uncooperative attitude to most of the lessons including practical lessons. She was too overpowered. Although she was weakened because of the seal, most of the other grade 1s would still be unable to create a single wound on her body. Even the strongest second-year student, Marie, would not be Huaran's match unless she was in her final boss form. How does that look? It looks great, right? This doesn't come off that easily. It's probably not going to come off unless we pull it as hard as we can. What is this even for though? After wearing the armbands, the students bragged about it and showed off. Most of those boasting students were in grade 3, and the grade 5 students wearing black armbands were still crestfallen. Even Lark. There was actually a competitive spirit in Lark's eyes. It was a completely different expression compared to how he looked on his first day at the academy. It seemed that learning a medium-ranked spell with the grimoire had definitely been a big help for him. He might even pull off a big one here. Well, that was up to him though. Let's wish him good luck considering how close we were now. Now, attention. Those armbands are the same as your lives. When that armband comes off, you will be disqualified on the spot. Hearing that, the students double-checked their armbands to make sure it was nice and tight. You will now move to the hunting grounds. Defeat everything you see on the way, because otherwise, you might be the one that ends up dying. Gulp. The students tensed up upon hearing those scary words, but unlike what his words suggested, there were actually professors in the forest that ensured students would not die an unfortunate death. Besides, the biggest enemies of this practical lesson weren't the demonic beasts but students, the senior students who would be waiting in the woods. How do we use the armband? It was a sharp question and was perhaps the most important of all. You can return the armbands that you've acquired to the shed at the end of the forest. You will receive points depending on your armbands and the time of your arrival, and those points can be substituted for items. This event was an important one that hardcore players would retry time after time because obtaining 100 points, which was an extremely difficult feat, would directly lead to the acquirement of a hidden piece. The students created a buzz. Quite a lot of them appeared to have noticed that the armbands would each have different points. Seeing those freshman students glare at other students like predators while licking their lips, I was once again in awe of how bright the future was for this academy. In any case, the reason why the practical lesson at the hunting grounds was so famous for being a tough challenge was because gaining 100 points was absurdly difficult. You had to at least defeat 1 or 2 grade 2 named characters and obtain their armbands. Considering my current level, that was obviously impossible. Hold on. Wow. What's going to be the first prize? Is it food? Alicia muttered in excitement with her eyes sparkling like stars. She was the prime example of all brawn and no brain, and currently, she was incapable of properly using both the eyes of the boundary and the domain severance. Unlike other named characters whose special abilities were monstrous, she was a purely physical character. It might actually be possible. Even though my current physique wasn't even in the realms of a grade 3 knight, it should be possible to defeat all the grade 2 students except for Yule and Doron as long as I played around their weaknesses. Whatever. Either go big or go home. Alicia, did you complete your mission? Mr. Corinne, thank you for your help on the weekend. Thanks to that, I have enough money for the time being. Really? That's awesome. Oh, right, do you want some candies? It's way too sweet for me. Huck. This is. The packaging, which had the drawing of a childlike bee, was that of the renowned Honey Bomb candies, which all the girls love these days, including my younger sister. I was carrying a few of them around in case I needed some sugar and wasn't expecting them to come in handy like this. Thanks for the food. Alicia didn't turn them down, which was as expected considering how there was a text on the profile back when it was a game that Arden sisters liked Honey Bomb candies. Munch munch. Wow, it actually explodes like a bomb inside the mouth and has honey coming out from inside. I bought them for my younger sister, but they're too sweet. Do you want some more? I will not turn your kind offer down. What she didn't know was that there was a tiny tracking rune letter engraved on the candy she ate just then. Let's get moving now. When it was time, Lady Josephine struck the air with the whip. Slap. It gave off the same sound as usual, but the result was completely different. The afterimage left behind by the whip turned into a cluster of mana that sucked in everything nearby like a black hole. I'm getting pulled in. Kaya. After being pulled into the black hole, I opened my eyes and found myself in the middle of an expansive forest.